Chapter 558. Initially, Qin Wushuang was rejoicing inwardly. Indeed, as Bao Bao had said, this surface was extremely sturdy. Only, Qin Wushuang did not expect that even though Bao Bao and the others could not destroy it, Luo Tongtian, an elite warrior at the exquisite mysterious boundary, could not destroy it. It seemed that to get out, he could only sacrifice another supreme Tao 5 elemental talisman. When he thought here, Qin Wushuang became much calmer. Without a divine weapon, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect could not open the surface. Did the sect have a divine weapon? Qin Wushuang did not believe it at all. Luo Tongtian and Luo Henji exchanged glances and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect did not have a supreme Tao weapon. Could it be they had to borrow it again? Both of them looked at the heavenly punishing hawk. The heavenly punishing hawk laughed. "Don't look at me, I don't have any divine weapon. But your sect should have one, right?" Luo Henji did not sound confident when he said these words. "That's a matter for the sect, you are not expecting me to ask, right? Ha ha." The heavenly punishing hawk looked at Luo Tongtian and the others with a mocking look. Clearly, this was impossible. "Head Tao warrior." Luo Henji sent his voice. "This place is the spiritual chi source of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Even if we borrowed a divine weapon, you and I would not have the courage to destroy it. In case we damaged the spiritual source, it would be the same as cutting off our own path of retreat. You and I would become the sinners of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect." Luo Tongtian gave a long sigh. "Second, I also think the same. However, have you thought about how that kid did not die after getting swept into the ley lines? At this moment, he was probably cultivating with relish inside. It's not a good idea for us to keep dragging it out. Don't forget, he has a bow and arrow that was rumored to be a supreme Tao weapon. Since you have the power to destroy the subduing Devil Stone Tablet, most likely, he has the power to escape." This was a situation where they could neither advance nor retreat. If they did not do anything and just waited here, it would not be a solution. It seemed that they would not be able to exhaust that kid to death. They would take the initiative to attack and borrow the divine weapon to break the surface to kill this kid. After all, this was the foundation of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Once the earth veins were destroyed, it was equivalent to losing the last of their capital. In the case that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect could not acquire a seat at the heavenly Emperor Mountain, it would be equivalent to losing their base. They would inevitably fall into the tragic situation of being homeless and destitute. At this moment, the heavenly punishing hawk's eyes suddenly turned and shot out a cold light, as if it wanted to see through the ruins. "He's down there, I can feel it." The heavenly punishing eagle suddenly screeched and flapped its wings excitedly. "It's here." "Go down about 1,000 feet. Hundreds of meters?" Luo Tongtian and Luo Henji were both dumbfounded. With such thickness, such density, and such sturdiness, it could only be broken by the power of the divine Tao. It turned out that after Qin Wushuang discovered that the other party was unable to break through the surface, he was relieved and continued his cultivation journey. He did not have the time to waste with Luo Tongtian and the rest. He had to make the best use of his time. Luo Tongtian was flustered and exasperated. Despite knowing that the enemy was within 1,000 feet of him, he could not do anything to him. Indeed, this sense of defeat made him feel incomparably furious. He roared, "Qin Wushuang, I know you are down there. There is a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There is no door to hell, but you charge in. Since you have destroyed my mountain gate, I will dig a grave for you." Hearing Luo Tongtian's meaningless curses, Qin Wushuang did not pay any attention to him. In fact, Qin Wushuang was rather happy to make a grandmaster so flustered and exasperated. The more Luo Tongtian lost his self-control, the happier he felt. "Kid with the surname Qin, did that old bastard Lu Xianlu teach you this vicious move? You will hide down there for the rest of your life, I would like to see how long you can last." The heavenly punishing hawk laughed mockingly. Head Dao warrior Luo, you are not planning to drown him with your saliva, right? Regardless of how much you curse, he will not care about you. Inwardly, Luo Tongtian was furious. Yet, it was inappropriate for him to vent his anger. He only scolded, Qin, at such a young age you are so vicious. You destroyed my mountain gate. This is a shady business that deserves to be struck by lightning. Remember, this is your retribution. When Qin Wushuang heard up to this point, a wave of anger rushed to his head as he said coldly, Luo Tongtian, after all, you are a grandmaster figure. What's the point of jumping and spitting here? Only you are allowed to chase after me and destroy my sect, but I am not allowed to destroy your mountain gate? Stunned, Luo Tongtian said angrily, that mediocre sect of your human countries is worthy to be compared to my heavenly Luo Daoist sect? That's right, not only will I destroy your sect, I will also kill all your secular family members. Before I kill them, I will tell them that everything is because of you, Qin Wushuang. Luo Tongtian's tone was filled with madness. Qin Wushuang said with a cold sneer, Luo Tongtian, you have gone against the natural order. If the heavens do not punish you, I, Qin Wushuang, will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. One day, the sword of ruling will chop off your dog head. Luo Tongtian laughed. Kid, you don't even think before you speak big words. They both had the same thought. They must still borrow this divine weapon. Regardless, they must not let Qin Wushuang have the opportunity to train to the Supreme Dao stage. They must kill this kid in the cradle of his growth. Or else, there would be no end of trouble. It was because this kid was growing too fast, and the methods he had displayed were too devilish. Second, you still have to make a trip. Luo Tongtian sent his spiritual perception. Inwardly, Luo Henji also smiled bitterly. He was truly unwilling to go. It was because this task was not for a human to do. During the time he had been visiting the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, he had been receiving cold treatment from both the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect. Other people had also been lukewarm to his suggestions. They did not show much enthusiasm. To a person with an illustrious position at the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect, an ordinary person would not be able to endure the feeling of being bullied at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Most importantly, it would have been fine to suffer some grievances. There were some matters that could not be done. For example, when they invited elite warriors of the Supreme Dao, they would not even pay attention to them. Second, I know that this task is not easy to do. However, besides you, both of them are not suited for this task. You also know. Luo Tongtian had no other way. In terms of diplomatic skills, Tian Mingshan and Zhua Lungshuang were incomparable to Luo Henji. Even Luo Tongtian knew that he was not as good as second Luo Henji in this aspect. Luo Henji said with a bitter smile, Head Dao warrior, last time I went I said everything I needed to say. I almost knelt down and begged them. However, they did not listen to anything. They were not even willing to send elite warriors of the Supreme Dao, not to mention lending us the divine weapon. I feel that they will not lend it to us. Second, regardless, you must go. However, Luo Henji said, Head Dao warrior, the power of the Supreme Dao does not necessarily have to rely on the divine weapon. If you can break into the Supreme Dao stage, you can also break through this surface. You can even enter the depths of the ley lines and kill the other party. Now that Qin Wushuang can only go in, but not come out. He can only wait to be captured. Luo Tongtian gave a long sigh. Second, do you think I don't want to break through? The Supreme Dao stage is completely different from the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. I have tried for many years and never succeeded. I cannot predict when I will break through. It is not a solution to keep waiting like this. There is a knot in my heart that prevents me from focusing on breaking into the Supreme Dao stage. This was the truth. Luo Tongtian was trapped by this knot in his heart, and it had developed towards the direction of a heart devil. If he could not solve it, Most likely it would become his life's door. Head Dao warrior, then tell me, how should I tell them? Luo Henji was truly helpless. Indeed, I cannot think of any way to persuade them. You will find a way. Suddenly, Luo Tongtian's expression sank as he sent his spiritual perception to his ears. Second, last time you went, you only spoke good words. Of course, these people will not listen to you. This time, you will state the stakes to them. Just say that a monstrous figure has emerged from the branch of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Most likely, he will enter the ranks of the Supreme Tao stage in a few dozen years. When you tell them these words, I promise they will not take it seriously. Upon hearing these instructions, Luo Henji's eyes also lit up. This chapter is a bit late, there are still 2 more chapters. Even if I work until late at night, I will not slack off. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 559. To those 2 powerhouses that only wanted to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, the words from the head Tao warrior was definitely a major piece of news. They must pay attention to it. Perhaps they could remain indifferent to the situation of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Perhaps they could ignore any grudges outside of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. However, if an unexpected situation truly occurred that was enough to threaten their plans to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, the reaction of these 2 powerhouses would certainly be violent. Luo Henji revealed a joyful expression as he sent his spiritual perception to ask, "Then for my trip, should I borrow a divine weapon or invite an elite warrior of the divine level? If an elite warrior of the divine level is willing to come, that would be the best. We can borrow the hand of an elite warrior of the divine level to make Qin Wushuang die without a burial place. Believe me, if it is to deal with a disciple of the Qin clan that could threaten their plans, I believe they will be interested," Luo Tongtian said with confidence. He was extremely satisfied with his plan to borrow a knife to kill someone. Luo Henji nodded and said to Luo Tongtian, "There is no time to lose, I will go now. Go quickly and come back quickly." Counting the distance, it would take at most 4 or 5 days. The most crucial part was the persuasion process. This process could be fast or slow and unpredictable. Although their words were persuasive, it was still unknown whether those 2 powerhouses would be moved. Luo Henji said, "Whether we can go quickly and come back quickly, the crucial part is their attitude. Try to do it in 10 days. Luo Tongtian set a target. Luo Henji said, "If they agree, perhaps it would not even take 10 days. If they still remain indifferent, then even 20 days might not be enough. In 10 days, if they do not agree, you will come back. It would be meaningless to keep waiting." Luo Tongtian knew the pros and cons of this matter. When Qin Wushuang heard no movements from above them, he was already somewhat alert. He knew that they must be communicating with each other through spiritual perception. This Luo Tongtian suddenly became silent and stopped swearing. For sure, he must be plotting a way to deal with me. The words of that heavenly punishing hawk must have provoked them. That feathered beast is also talkative and deliberately said those words to provoke these idiots of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. This Luo Tongtian must have believed it and will definitely deal with me at all costs. Although Qin Wushuang was in the earth vein, his mind was still very sharp. After using his brain for a bit, he was able to guess the stakes involved. If I let them borrow a divine artifact, or even a divine-level expert, then I'll be dead. Qin Wushuang pondered. No matter what, I can't let them succeed. At the very least, we must leave before they succeed. When he thought here, Qin Wushuang directly contacted Bao Bao and asked, "Bao Bao, where are you guys?" Seeing that Qin Wushuang had contacted him, Bao Bao said with joy, "Boss, we are already far away from the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. We are still some distance away from the floating snow house, yet we are close to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain." Qin Wushuang said, Bao Bao, to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. To the Heavenly Emperor Mountain? Bao Bao asked with confusion. Qin Wushuang said with a determined tone. Yes, to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Regardless of who you find, the higher the seniority, the better. Regardless, we must stop people of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect from borrowing a divine artifact from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, or even invite a divine-level elite warrior. From my estimation, most likely Luo Henji will still be the one going to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Qin Wushuang immediately explained the current situation. Bao Bao was smart and immediately understood the severity of the situation. Boss, this way, Luo Tongtian cannot break through that place? Without the power of the divine Tao, it's impossible to break it. Qin Wushuang said. Boss, since you have mastered the power of the divine Tao, you can break it directly. When Bao Bao said here, he immediately denied this statement. No, boss, you cannot act blindly without thinking. Even if you break through the surface, they will set up an inescapable net to deal with you. Even if you have the graceful spiritual Bao and the divine Tao 5 elemental talisman, you cannot defend against their numbers. Qin Wushuang said with a bitter smile. With Luo Tongtian here, even if I can use the power of the divine Tao, I am afraid I cannot do anything to him. This was not Qin Wushuang being modest, nor was he belittling himself. It was the truth. The power of the divine Tao he had mastered did not come purely from his own body. Instead, he borrowed the power of external objects and could only unleash it in an instant. It could be used for a sneak attack. However, in a head-on battle, the other party would not collide with him directly. Once the other party evaded this wave of attacks, with Qin Wushuang's current strength, he would not have the capital to exchange moves with Luo Tongtian, who was at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Not to mention, this 9 refined mysterious wind valley had 10 layers of defense. Dozens of elite warriors at the perfect void martial stage and the profound void martial stage were all waiting for him. Therefore, unless it was the last resort, Qin Wushuang would never want to go out recklessly. It was because he did not have any information about elite warriors at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. He also did not know whether his purple cloud in yang wings could escape with his life. Ever since he had advanced to the transformation void martial stage, the purple cloud in yang wings had undergone another evolution. This evolution had allowed Qin Wushuang to clearly feel that he had been reborn. However, since he was trapped, he could not test flying. He had no idea what the evolved purple cloud in yang wings would be like. Everything was unknown. Because of this reason, Qin Wushuang did not dare to take the risk. At the transformation void martial stage, Qin Wushuang could still practice many divine skills. Initially at the Monkey King Mountain, that mysterious senior Yun Xuechen had taught him a secret technique, the cloud feathery technique. He could only start practicing this divine skill after entering the transformation void martial stage. Qin Wushuang had done some research and knew that if he combined this cloud feathery technique with the purple cloud in yang wings, the effect would be great. However, due to the fact that he had not reached the transformation void martial stage, he could not put this bold idea into practice. Now that he had entered the transformation void martial stage, he had no chance to practice it in the ley lines. Now, Qin Wushuang decided to study this cloud feathery technique. On the other hand, after Bao Bao received Qin Wushuang's request, he said to Lone, "Senior Lone, it seems we must change our path. To the Heavenly Emperor Mountain? Yes, if we don't go to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, Boss will be in great danger. That Luo Tongtian is also skilled. He knew that Boss was hiding under the ley lines. So monstrous? No wonder he is an elite warrior of the exquisite mysterious boundary stage." Lone still admired elite warriors, even if they were enemies. Humph, how could Luo Tongtian have this skill? It's a heavenly punishing hawk that Luo Henji borrowed from the heavenly punishing villa. It is extremely sharp, and it was the one that sensed Boss's track. It exposed Boss's location. Heavenly Punishing Hawk. Lone snorted. Such an arrogant name, Heavenly Punishing? With this name, are they not afraid of receiving divine punishment? Bao Bao said. Boss said that if the Sound of Thunder sect and the Heavenly Punishing Villa believed the slanderous words of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect, even if they did not send elite warriors, they would lend them a divine weapon to break the surface. Thus, we must ask for help from the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. It would be best if the people of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect could not even enter the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Fortunately, their current location was not far from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. In less than half a day, they arrived at the border of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. From afar, the Heavenly Emperor Mountain was covered by a boundless golden light. As this golden light filled the sky, it looked like a boundless golden ocean. Among this boundless ocean, the Heavenly Emperor Mountain sat within it like a fairyland. Just the Heavenly Emperor Mountain alone was a few 100,000 miles away. The Heavenly Emperor Mountain was divided into 8 gates. They were located at 8 different positions to protect the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. The successive Heavenly Emperors of the Xian Yuan Mound were all selected from the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gate. One could even say that the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates took turns to be the host. Of course, if one of the powerhouses was unprecedentedly powerful, the situation of taking turns would not exist. They would rule for a long time. For example, the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had sat on the Heavenly Emperor seat for a long time. Because they had sat there for a long time, they had offended too many people and caused others to be jealous and envious. Plus, the style of the Qin clan was extremely upright and firm. They acted swiftly and decisively. In the end, they were pushed aside and gave up the Heavenly Emperor seat. As Bao Bao and Lone looked at that spectacular Heavenly Emperor Mountain, for a time, they became somewhat nervous. However, in the end, these two were not afraid of the heavens or the earth. Their nervous mood had passed in an instant. They found the path and trekked towards the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. When approaching the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, they must be extremely careful. It was because it was easy to offend the bigwigs from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Bao Bao and Lone recognized the direction of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. With great effort, they found the foot of the Qin Mountain Gate in the midst of the golden mist. The headquarter of the Qin clan was called the Aspiring Throne Peak. The Aspiring Throne Peak was also one of the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gate. Since ancient times, the Qin clan had controlled it. Therefore, since the historical records of the Xian Yuan Mound, the bloodline of the Qin clan had lived at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Indeed, they were a clan with a long history and an extremely old qualification. Although these two were unyielding, before this ancient and holy sect, they would not dare to act presumptuously. They walked carefully. When they arrived at the mountain gate, they realized they could no longer fly in the sky. They could only trek. Just when they were trekking up the mountain, a few figures shot out from the middle of the mountain and stopped them. "Who are you?" Dressed in uniform, the guardian disciples of the Qin clan stopped these two at the foot of the mountain. "We are disciples of the Qin clan's branch. We have come urgently to seek help from the headquarters. Big brothers, please hurry up and inform them." "Inform who?" "Whoever has the highest seniority, I will inform them." Bao Bao scratched his head. He did not know who was the most senior at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain and could only say it this way. The expression of those guarding disciples changed slightly. "Friend, it's better not to make such jokes." Bao Bao became anxious. "I am not joking. My boss is in a life and death situation. I am not in the mood to joke with you guys. I beg you, hurry and inform them. It will be too late if you are late." When those disciples saw Bao Bao speaking the truth, they could not help but ask, "Who is your boss?" "Qin Wushuang, my boss is Qin Wushuang. Have you never heard of him? He is the #1 person in the human countries, the rising star of the Xian Yuan Mound, Qin Wushuang." Qin Wushuang. Of course, they had heard of this name. However, it was only limited to this. At the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, not many people had deliberately discussed this name. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 560. Due to the fact that the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect had sealed off the news, the outside world did not know that Qin Wushuang had directed the disaster of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect single-handedly. Thus, their knowledge of Qin Wushuang had stopped at those few rumors. To freelance martial artists, those rumors might be shocking. However, to the knowledgeable Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, it was not earth-shattering. If the news of Qin Wushuang destroying the headquarters of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect had spread out, most likely even the Heavenly Emperor Mountain would be shaken. When Bao Bao saw that these disciples did not show the slightest trace of shock, he could not help but feel somewhat frustrated. Could it be that they had never heard of Boss's thunderous reputation? Hey, what's with your expression? Bao Bao was extremely anxious. Now that we have reported our names, why haven't you reported it? Those disciples said with a bitter smile. This way, you two are not Qin Wushuang? Of course not, Qin Wushuang is our boss. Currently, he is trapped at the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect and is in a critical situation. My boss has been working for the Qin clan in secret. At this time, you can't leave him to die, right? Like a firecracker, Bao Bao continued to speak. If a disciple of the Qin clan is in trouble, of course we will not shirk our duty. However, you two are tangled up. How can you prove that you are disciples of the Qin clan? Bao Bao was extremely anxious. You guys are really clueless. We are not disciples of the Qin clan, we are only subordinates of boss Qin Wushuang. Evidence, my boss has too much evidence on him. Does helping the 100-leaf Qin clan count as evidence? He has the command plate of the ancestor of the Qin clan, does it count as evidence? And the will and remains of senior Qin Shushuan, does it count as evidence? These words made these guarding disciples look at each other in dismay. It did not sound like they were speaking without thinking. One of the slightly older disciples said, "Then wait a moment, I will go report to the elder in charge of this pass. I will be back soon." Go quickly, it's best to report to the leader with the highest seniority. The disciple hurriedly went up the mountain. Not long after, a white light shuttled through the clouds, and a figure landed at the foot of the mountain. It was a middle-aged man wearing a coarse hemp gown, straw sandals, and a bamboo hat on his back. He was dressed like a wanderer in Chuanjian. This person had a long beard and looked somewhat otherworldly. Elder Guanqi. The few disciples all went forward to greet him. Initially, this man was called Elder Guanqi. Bao Bao walked up. Elder, long story short, you don't have to say any more. I only have one question. How did Qin Shushuan die? When Bao Bao mentioned Qin Shushuan, he also felt somewhat sad. He recounted his experience at the Wild Flame Cliff and emphasized, "At that time, Senior Qin Shushuan risked his life to send us away. He also left my boss a fragrant storage pouch, which contained adamantine meteorite, extreme green jade essence, and the like. It seems to have been snatched from the heavenly punishing villa or the sound of thunder sect. Come with me." As Elder Guanqi spoke, he raised his hand and dragged these two living treasures into the air. They followed the lump of cloud under his feet and rushed up the mountain. "Elder, you have great skills," Bao Bao complimented. "Do you know why I trusted you guys?" Elder Guanqi asked with a smile. No. Bao Bao was straightforward. The 100-leaf Qin clan had secretly sent a message and praised you guys. From that time, we started to pay attention to your movements. Only, Qin Wushuang did not go deep into the Xian Yuan Mound and was forced back to the human countries by the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Due to the difficult situation at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, the headquarters did not have much time to pay attention to Qin Wushuang's subsequent development. Bao Bao was overjoyed as he asked proudly, This way, your headquarters has already started to pay attention to my boss's reputation? You can say it this way. Elder Guanxi had a good temperament and self-cultivation. Besides, not only us elders, the higher-ups at the headquarters also know the name Qin Wushuang. It's a great contribution to protect the 100-leaf Qin clan. What's more rare is that a young man from the human countries has such potential. It's an unexpected gain for the Qin clan. Initially, we summoned you to the headquarters to train you. Now it seems that there is no need to train at the headquarters. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect has already trained you guys well, haha. This elder Guanxi was in a great mood. In the midst of their conversation, they had already arrived at the mountain peak. Bao Bao looked back and only saw that within the sea of clouds and mist, there were expanses of majestic buildings. Among the clouds and mist, various mountain peaks and valleys appeared serene and unfathomable. For such grand occasion, even the heavenly sun mountain of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect could not compare. No wonder it's the heavenly Emperor Mountain. Bao Bao sighed with emotion from the bottom of his heart. If our boss could train here, he would soon become the strongest among the young generation of the Xian Yuan Mound. Strongest among the young generation? Elder Guanxi laughed. You guys have great ambitions. That's the truth. Elder, if you see my boss, you will not think I am bragging. Bao Bao chuckled. Elder Guanxi led them to drop on top of the cliff and walked inside. After passing through many side halls, they arrived at the entrance of a main hall. There was a giant board in this main hall. 4 golden words were carved on it, Boundless Righteous Qi. This is the Righteous Qi Hall, let's go in. Guanxi greeted the guardian at the entrance of the Righteous Qi Hall and walked in with Bao Bao and Lone. The Upright Morality Hall was indeed magnificent. Even though they were frivolous, in front of the Upright Morality Hall, they also swept away their usual unruly habits and followed Elder Guanxi blindly, not daring to go out of line in the slightest. After Guanxi led these two into the Righteous Qi Hall, there was already a group of people dressed similarly to Elder Guanxi sitting there. Judging from their identity and position, a few of them seemed to have a higher status than Guanxi. However, regardless of Guanxi or those people with higher status, they all appeared extremely respectful before that person sitting at the highest position. That person was dressed in a yellow robe and stood in the middle of the Righteous Qi Hall. Like a sculpture, he gave people an extremely ethereal feeling. Bao Bao and Lone did not even have the courage to look at that person. When they stopped to look at that person, it was as if they were gazing at an extremely deep whirlpool. After a moment they felt dizzy and dizzy. That person had soft and tender skin. When he turned around, he had the face of a baby. If it weren't for his tall figure, one would almost suspect that he was a baby. It's an honor to meet you, Third Chief. That person waved his hand and said to Guanxi, Guanxi, you sent your spiritual perception to everyone at the foot of the mountain. Is there something urgent? Elder Guanxi walked out respectfully. Third Chief, I remember you had issued an order for everyone to pay attention to a young man called Qin Wushuang. This kid has appeared again at the Xian Yuan Mound. Oh? A while ago, wasn't the heavenly Luo Daoist sect chasing after him all over the world? That Third Chief asked lightly. Yes, but the heavenly Luo Daoist sect chased after him with great effort and did not have any clues. Their bounty has been increasing, yet it's becoming more of a joke. That Third Chief could not help but laugh. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect is truly regressing. Last time, they had surrounded and attacked the disciples we sent out to investigate Qin Wushuang. We still haven't settled this debt with them. I heard that Luo Henji of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was running between the heavenly punishing villa and the sound of thunder sect. It seems that this heavenly Luo Daoist sect is determined to go against the Qin clan, right? Elder Guanxi smiled bitterly and did not know how to answer. However, Bao Bao continued to cry out, Yes, it's 100% correct. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect colluded with the heavenly punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect to deal with the Qin clan together. They want to replace the Qin clan's position at the heavenly Emperor Mountain. A trace of embarrassment flashed across everyone's face. At the same time, they were somewhat angry. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect was worthy to become enemies with the heavenly Emperor Qin clan? The third chief looked at Bao Bao and asked with some doubt, "Guan Qi, why did you bring two little spiritual beasts up here?" Bao Bao and Lone were astonished. Currently, they had transformed into human forms. Even an elite warrior at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage might not be able to see through their human forms. Who would have thought that the third sect master would be able to see through their true bodies so easily? Guan Qi said, "Little spiritual beasts? Oh right, they said they are Qin Wushuang's companions and followers. I have an important matter to report." "Important matter?" the third chief asked with a smile. "Yes, great chief, I beg you, please hurry and help my boss. And I need it. If we wait until Luo Henji borrows the divine weapon from the heavenly Emperor Mountain, it will be too late." "What's going on? How is it related to the divine weapon?" Bao Bao cried out. "You guys really don't know?" "Know what?" Bao Bao gave a long sigh as he saw that they did not seem to be in disguise. "You guys should have heard about the destruction of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, right?" Everyone nodded to show that they knew. "Then it was my boss who did it." When Bao Bao said here, he could not help but stick out his chest. Apparently, he was proud of this feat, although he had not done it. However, he felt that it would not be a problem to borrow some of Qin Wushuang's glory. Qin Wushuang destroyed the foundation of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect? The third chief could not help but laugh. If I remember correctly, Qin Wushuang seemed to have just entered the refined void martial stage, right? Ah, great chief, don't judge people with old eyes. I am not lying to you, indeed, it was my boss who did it. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect had some subduing devil stone tablet that seemed to be the foundation of the sect. My boss shot it into 4 pieces with 3 arrows from the graceful spiritual bow, and it collapsed with a loud bang. Then, the entire heavenly sun mountain seemed to have collapsed. However, unfortunately, my boss was sucked into the spiritual whirlpool under the collapsed stone tablet and was buried under the ley lines. Bao Bao described with joy as if he was the one who had done everything. However, when he talked about Qin Wushuang's difficult situation, his tone could not help but become much dimmer as he appeared to be anxious. Everyone looked at each other in dismay and vividly, they felt that this little spiritual beast was not speaking nonsense. "Great chief, I am speaking the truth. I am not joking, if you had not saved my boss, he would not have made it through this time. His trump cards are not enough to fight against a divine weapon, or even an elite warrior of the divine level," Bao Bao said with a begging tone. Since Qin Wushuang could shoot at the stone tablet, why could he not come out? Someone asked. "It's not that my boss could not come out, but that he could not. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect borrowed some bird hawk from the heavenly punishing villa and locked onto my boss's position. As long as my boss shows signs of rushing out, the inescapable net of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect will surround him. You guys don't think that my boss has the strength to challenge the entire heavenly Luo Daoist sect alone, right?" When the third chief heard up to this point, he frowned deeply. Inwardly, there was indeed a perilous wave of shock. This was definitely an accident, an unexpected great harvest. To the heavenly Emperor Qin clan that was declining day by day, Qin Wushuang, this young man was a piece of unpolished jade sent by the heavens. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 561. Bao Bao's words of exultation had caused each of the higher-ups of the Qin headquarters to feel incredibly shocked. They had heard of the reputation of Qin Wushuang. Until now, they only felt that an exceptional young man had appeared in the human countries. However, their fixed mindset made them feel that regardless of how high the talent of a young man from the human countries was, for sure, limited. In the end, he could not be compared to the disciples of the Xian Yuan Mound. Thus, although they were interested in Qin Wushuang's experience, they had never placed too much hope on Qin Wushuang. Not to mention expecting any miracle from Qin Wushuang. Since they were not mentally prepared, they were even more shocked when they heard Bao Bao's words. The person behind the scenes that had destroyed the lifeline of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, left them in a terrible fix, and made them the laughingstock of the entire Xian Yuan Mound, was Qin Wushuang? That young man from the human countries? It was not that they did not believe it, but this matter was too bizarre and outrageous. Although the third chief appeared calm, he was incredibly joyful inwardly. He said to Guanqi, "Guanqi, take them to rest." Bao Bao said urgently, "Great chief, we are not tired, we don't need to rest. Now, the most crucial thing is to save my boss." The third chief said with a smile, "Don't worry, from what you said, you guys came here from nearby the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Even if people of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect were to seek help from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, it would be at least 2 or 3 days later. There's still time. If you trust me, follow Elder Guanqi to take a rest." "Great Chief, I see that you have a benevolent appearance and seem like a good person. Tell me, are you going to take care of my boss's matter?" The third chief laughed leisurely and answered with extreme patience. "Although the final decision of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan is not in my hands. However, I promise you that for sure, I will take care of Qin Wushuang's matter." Hearing his promise, Bao Bao finally put down the giant stone in his heart. He laughed. "Then I will report the good news to my boss and let him feel at ease." As he spoke, he took out the communication jade plate and wanted to contact Qin Wushuang. However, when he sent his spiritual perception into the jade plate, he realized that he could not communicate. The third chief said with a smile, "Little one, this is the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. There were prohibitions everywhere. Usually, these things would not work on the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. It's only useful in certain places." Bao Bao scratched his ears and cheeks. There are so many rules. Helpless, he could only follow Elder Guanqi down. As the third chief sent Bao Bao and Lone off with his eyes, a strange smile hung on his face. Apparently, he was in an extremely joyful mood. "Everyone, this time, the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect has suffered a great loss, ha ha." When the third chief thought of this matter, he found it extremely funny. Even if he did not look at the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect from an enemy's point of view, the entire matter was somewhat comical. For some reason, the Grand Heavenly Luo Daoist sect had formed a grudge with a young man from the human countries. Not only that, they could not take care of this young man, on the contrary, they had suffered a vicious counterattack. It seemed that the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect was destined to become the laughingstock of the Xian Yuan Mound and the laughingstock of everyone who lacked money. Sect Master, aren't those two spirit beasts a little exaggerated? Some people could not help but raise some questions. After thinking about it, they still felt this matter was too bizarre. The third chief shook his head with a smile. "No, although that little spiritual beast has a funny personality, its words would not have been exaggerated. This Qin Wushuang is truly unexpected. If it's truly Qin Wushuang, then this Qin Wushuang is too shocking." One of the honored warriors praised. In the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, the position of the honored warriors was second only to the 3 sect masters. At the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, seniority and position were determined by one's strength. The sect master held the highest position and must be at the Supreme Tao stage. Therefore, the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had 3 sect masters who were all elite warriors of the Supreme Tao stage. Beneath the sect masters were the honored warriors who must be at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Regardless of the common mysterious stage or the ravine mysterious stage, One must be at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage to be qualified to become an honored warrior. In the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, there were 12 honored warriors. These honored warriors formed the second group. Next would be elders like Guan Qi. They were all at the perfect void martial stage. Only those at the perfect void martial stage were qualified to assume the position of elder. Similar to the position of elder, the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had set up core disciples. At the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, the position of core disciples was on par with the elders. The strength of some core disciples had even surpassed the elders. However, since they were core disciples and did not have enough potential, it was rare for them to be promoted to honored warriors. Beneath the elders were the protectors. At the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, the protectors were the main force in battle. One must be at the profound void martial stage to be qualified to become a protector. The protectors also had protector disciples. Protector disciples held a lower position than the protectors. Those who possessed the strength of the transformation void martial stage were qualified to become a protector disciple. Besides the protector disciples, they were ordinary disciples. Thus, at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, each person was clear of their position. Each person had a clear motivation and a determined direction to strive for. Of course, the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan did not only possess a perfect management system. Most importantly, the Qin clan that had been entrenched at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain since the ancient times had a sense of belonging to the clan. They had a sense of identity with the clan. The pride and sense of belonging produced by this sense of identity had allowed the disciples of the Qin clan to create many surprises and miracles that others could not imagine. Thus, despite the fact that in these 1,000 years, the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had been surviving in the cracks and the environment was extremely dangerous, no one had been able to uproot the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. No one had ever been able to expel the Qin clan from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. This was the foundation and inheritance. Even in the face of adversity, there would always be a form of undying belief that supported them and became their source of motivation. Apparently, these honored warriors and elders were communicating with each other. They were extremely shocked by the astonishing performance displayed by Qin Wushuang. Of course, they also hated the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. A while ago, the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect had been running around the Heavenly Emperor Mountain to curry favor with the Sound of Thunder sect and the Heavenly Punishing Villa. On the surface, they felt that they had become enemies with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan because of Qin Wushuang. In fact, everyone knew that the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect intended to seize the position of one of the Heavenly Emperor 8-Gate. They wanted to replace the foundation of the Qin clan at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. To the disciples of the Qin clan, this was an extraordinary shame and humiliation. They did not find it strange that someone was eyeing them covetously. They were only furious that a second-rate powerhouse like the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect had dared to target them. This was the most depressing matter for the entire Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Thus, when the news of the destruction of the mountain gate of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect had spread out, the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan felt extremely relieved. Only, they found it strange that in the end, who had made such a gratifying move. Regardless, they had never thought that it was a disciple of the Qin clan from the human countries that had made such an astonishing move. This made them happy, and at the same time they also felt a sense of pride. All the Qin clan in the world had originated from the same sect and had come from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Thus, this was a matter of sharing glory. As long as it was a disciple of the Qin clan that had done it, even if they had come from the human countries, the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan would feel proud. Everyone, during this time, this Qin Wushuang had shared a lot of pressure for us. Although the malignant tumor of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect was not enough to pose a fatal threat to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, they were still a problem. Now, Qin Wushuang had also helped us to teach them a lesson. For this matter with Qin Wushuang, we will not shirk our duty. The third chief spoke slowly and glanced across everyone's face. Initially, since the Qin clan in the world had originated from the same sect, they should take care of each other. Not to mention, this Qin Wushuang had made such great achievements for the Qin clan. Regardless of emotion or reason, they should lend a helping hand. Third chief is right, we cannot sit and do nothing. Not to mention that Qin Wushuang had made great contributions. Even if an ordinary disciple of the Qin clan had come to seek refuge, we cannot leave them to die under our eyes. Or else, how could we live up to the bloodline of the Qin clan? That's right, we must save him. We must not disappoint the hearts of all disciples of the Qin clan. Third sect leader, why don't you send me instead? Although that Luo Tongtian is strong, he has not entered the Supreme Tao stage. Even if I cannot kill him, I can restrain him. I will go with honored warrior Yang. Another honored warrior also volunteered. With us two honored warriors, we can restrain the main force of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. With a few more elders, it will be enough to suppress the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. With their mountain gate destroyed, without any mechanisms, there is nothing to be afraid of. The reason why the heavenly Luo Taoist sect was powerful, besides having outstanding talents among the second-rate powerhouses, the unique mountain gate of the heavenly Sun Mountain was also a major foundation. Everyone knew that the mountain gate of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect was one of the best in the Xian Yuan Mound. For such impregnable defense, besides elite warriors of the Supreme Tao stage, those below the Supreme Tao stage could only stand on the side. Now, with the mountain gate of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect destroyed, the mechanisms had become nothing more than floating clouds. Naturally, these honored warriors of the exquisite mysterious boundary stage had the urge to give it a try. However, the third chief was smiling at ease. After everyone had finished speaking, he said, "I am gratified by your enthusiastic attitude. However, for this matter, there is no need to make such a big fuss. Everyone, please wait here for a moment, I will go ask for instructions from the second chief." After he had finished speaking, he turned around and walked out of the upright morality hall. He walked towards the clouds and mist deep inside the cliff. Although it appeared to be a small step in a few steps, his entire figure had disappeared without a trace. Before one of the mountain peaks of the aspiring Throne Mountain, the figure of the third chief dropped on the green grassland. The fairy-like environment had made him feel extremely good. "Ha, third, you seem to be in a good mood." A clear and bright voice emerged from the empty mountain peak. However, this voice was delivered in an ingenious way as if they were talking face to face. The third chief laughed leisurely. "Second, there is indeed a joyous matter." The voice was taken aback for a moment before it laughed. "Sure. How long has it been since the heavenly Emperor Qin clan had good news? This time, since you have come to tell me the joyous matter, surely it will not be an ordinary joyous matter." The two major heads laughed at the same time. To be continued. If you want to know about the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 562. On the hillside, a fiery red figure floated down like a cloud and suddenly landed on the hillside. When this red cloud dropped to the ground, it withdrew a wave of red light. A red-haired, red-bearded giant man dressed in a blazing robe walked over with a joyful smile on his bare feet. "Third, come quickly, I will treat you to the fire vermilion fruit wine I brewed recently." The words and actions of this giant man all appeared extremely rough. Especially his barefoot style, it was the exclusive signature of the many elite warriors of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. As soon as anyone saw this stance, they knew that this was the famous Qin Yunran of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. He was also one of the three most powerful heads of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, nicknamed Madman Ran. This Qin Yunran was the second chief of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. His position was even higher than the previous third chief. The baby face of the third chief was also an exclusive signature of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. People gave him the nickname of Immortal Youth. His original name was Qin Chongyang. These two major heads ruled the lifeline of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. As for the more mysterious head chief, he was even less familiar to people. He lived in seclusion and rarely came out. Indeed, the outside world had little impression of him. However, this mysterious and unfathomable head chief was the existence that many enemies of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan feared the most. Because of this unknown factor, the outside world kept making guesses. They did not know how terrifying the power of this mysterious head chief had reached. Many times, those enemies had planned to invade the aspiring throne mountain. However, in the end, they restrained their fear of this mysterious head chief and cancelled their plans midway. Madman Ran picked up the ancient vine cup and poured 2 full cups of fire vermilion fruit wine. When these two had finished laughing, Madman Ran filled it again. At the same time, he asked impatiently, "Third, tell me, what is the good news?" Qin Chongyang did not hide it and explained the whole sequence of events. Madman Ran raised his eyebrows when he heard the story. He was overjoyed at this turn of events. Such a thing happened? I have heard about that Qin Wushuang. Didn't the 100-leaf Qin clan say that Qin Wushuang had helped them out? Yes, but compared to these matters at hand, the surprise of the 100-leaf Qin clan does not appear as significant, ha. Madman Ran slapped his thigh. Then what are we waiting for? He couldn't miss out on such a treasure. Qin clan, ha. My Heavenly Emperor Qin clan has always taken the responsibility of enforcing justice for the heavens. If I do not disappoint the heavens will not disappoint me. Qin Chongyang nodded with a smile. Second, those honored warriors all want to go to the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. I feel that there is no need to make this matter too public. Rather than sending the honored warriors, it would be better for you or me to make a trip. Madman Ran thought for a moment, nodded and said, "That's right. If Luo Henji really invited a Supreme Tao warrior from the Thunder Sect or the Heavenly Punishing Villa, it would be inconvenient to send the honorables. Third brother, why don't I make a trip?" Qin Chongyang thought about it and said, "I'll go. Second brother, you stay at the aspiring throne mountain and take charge of the situation. How about that?" Madman Ran scratched his face and said with a smile, "Third brother, are you afraid that I'll cause trouble because of my impatience? Second brother, don't fight with me this time." Madman Ran smiled and said, "All right, I won't argue with you. However, that Qin Wushuang you brought back, you must take me to see him as soon as possible." Of course. Qin Chongyang raised the ancient vine cup and laughed. "Second brother, your winemaking skills are getting more refined. Leave some of this scarlet fruit wine, you can use it to welcome me back, ha. Again the two laughed. Inside the upright morality hall, Qin Chongyang had already returned. Now Bao Bao and Lone were brought up again. "Third chief, can we go now?" Bao Bao appeared incredibly urgent as he looked around at these people. "Who do you plan to send?" Qin Chongyang said with a smile. "What do you think if I go myself?" Bao Bao cheered with joy. "That's great. Great chief, you must not deny it." Qin Chongyang said, "Everyone, I discussed with the second chief and we both feel that it's inappropriate to make a big fuss over this matter. Therefore, I've decided to make a trip myself." Third chief, the current situation at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain is complicated. Usually, Supreme Tao elite warriors would not leave easily. I'm afraid that if you leave, you will arouse the suspicions of the Sound of Thunder sect and the Heavenly Punishing Villa. It will cause chaos in the situation. Yes, a slight move will affect the entire situation. Third chief. Qin Chongyang revealed a confident smile and waved his hand. It's their business to be suspicious. When the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan does things, the most important thing is to have our own ideas. Bao Bao and Lone nodded. Clearly, they knew that it would be better for the others to step out than for this great chief to step out. Third chief, where do you plan to stop Luo Henji at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain? Suddenly, Bao Bao asked. Qin Chongyang laughed. Why must we stop Luo Henji? Then what do you mean? Bao Bao asked with confusion. We will go directly to the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect and pick up your boss. Stunned, Bao Bao and Lone were overjoyed at this turn of events. Initially, they thought the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan would stop Luo Henji at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain area and prevent him from calling for help. Unexpectedly, the result was much better than what they had imagined. Great Chief, if that's the case, it's even better, Bao Bao said with joy. Then let's go now? Perhaps we can meet Luo Henji along the way and intercept him. Qin Chongyang laughed. That would be the best, it's killing two birds with one stone. After he had finished speaking, he turned around and instructed, Everyone, before I leave, if you have any difficult matters, you can ask the second chief. Third chief, have a pleasant journey. Everyone said in unison. Qin Chongyang took Bao Bao, Lone and floated out of the upright morality hall. They flew towards the bottom of the cliff. Bao Bao and Lone only felt that their bodies were flying in the air. They could not feel that the third chief was flying in the air. The strength of this third chief had disregarded space. He did not need any flying techniques as he flew in the air, as if he was walking on the ground. Inwardly, Bao Bao was speechless and could not help but ask, Great Chief, you are not the legendary Supreme Tao Elite Warrior, right? Ha ha, are the Supreme Tao Elite Warriors the legendary ones? Qin Chongyang asked with a smile. Bao Bao scratched his head and laughed. To us, the Supreme Tao Elite Warriors are the legendary existences. Qin Chongyang gave a long sigh. At the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, the Supreme Tao Elite Warriors are not the legendary existences. Bao Bao nodded heavily. Yes, Great Chief, in one day, I will also become an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao like you guys. Qin Chongyang laughed. I do not doubt this. Little spiritual beast, you have a rich presence of the immemorial spiritual beast bloodline. Your true body is of the monkey clan. Could it be you have the bloodline of the immemorial spiritual monkey? Bao Bao was shocked. Under normal circumstances, he loved to boast and announce to others that he had the bloodline of the immemorial spiritual monkey. Unexpectedly, this chief was this powerful. Did I hit the mark? Qin Chongyang asked with a smile. Bao Bao laughed mischievously. It's good that you guessed it, it saves me the time to introduce myself. Great Chief, this is Senior Lone. His clan is strange. He is called the Purple Flame Electric Beast. Ha ha, among the beast clans, is there such a Purple Flame Electric Beast? Great Chief, you are experienced and knowledgeable, surely you know about it? Lone laughed awkwardly. Great Chief, don't listen to Bao Bao's nonsense. Our clan only has one bloodline, there is nothing strange about it. Purple Flame Electric Beast? Qin Chongyang said with a frown. Perhaps I am ignorant and inexperienced. I have done a lot of research on the beast clans. The Purple Flame Electric Beast should be a mutated beast clan. Mutated beast clan? Bao Bao and Lone were confused as they looked at Qin Chongyang suspiciously. Little monkey, you have the bloodline of the immemorial spiritual monkey, for sure you have great talent. However, if he is a mutated beast clan, perhaps he has talent and potential no less than yours. Is that so? Bao Bao could not believe it. He looked at Lone and said with a chuckle, How come I cannot see that Senior Lone has such potential and talent? Qin Chongyang laughed. The talent of the mutated beast clan is not revealed. Also, it might not be discovered. Usually, under special circumstances, they would stimulate the mutated spiritual roots and acquire the mutated talent. From then on, they would become unstoppable. When Lone heard these words, he revealed a thoughtful expression. Apparently, he was rather excited by Qin Chongyang's unexpected news. Although he was a spiritual beast from a few thousand years ago, he was only a cub when he was sealed. During the few thousand years of being sealed, he did not evolve. Great Chief, am I truly a mutated spiritual beast? Lone asked with a worried expression. Although he was usually untamed, as if he did not put anyone in his eyes, before a Supreme Tao elite warrior, he was extremely respectful. It's only a possibility. Whether you are or not, it will depend on whether you can prove it in the future. Qin Chongyang laughed. According to my research on the beast clans, mutated beasts are extremely rare. If you are truly a mutated beast clan, sooner or later you will stimulate the mutated talent. Lone was extremely excited as he rubbed his palms. Great Chief, for sure I have the mutated talent, I believe it. In the midst of their conversation, they had already left the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Qin Chongyang was extremely cautious as he did not create a huge formation. Instead, he left through the secret passage of the aspiring throne mountain quietly. It was not because Qin Chongyang was timid, but for this matter, it was unnecessary to engage in a meaningless battle with the Sound of Thunder sect or the Heavenly Punishing Villa. To achieve great things, one should not bother with trifles. For the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, they were competing for the overall situation. It was like a game of chess. There was no need to care too much about the small gains and losses at the edges and corners. Boss, wait for us. I have already invited the Supreme Tao elite warriors of the Qin clan, Bao Bao said excitedly through the communication jade plate. At this moment, Qin Wushuang was training wholeheartedly deep inside the ley lines. When he heard such good news, he was rather stunned. Supreme Tao elite warriors had stepped out? This formation seemed to be much bigger than he had imagined. He rather hoped that he could stay a little longer deep inside the ley lines. Even if it was just a month. If a Supreme Tao elite warrior had come to welcome him, it would be difficult for Qin Wushuang to stay inside and not leave. Thinking about such superior training environment, perhaps even the Heavenly Emperor Mountain could not encounter it, right? To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 563. When Bao Bao saw Qin Wushuang remaining silent, he laughed. Boss, could it be you fainted from joy? Aren't you too fragile? Your mental endurance. Qin Wushuang said with a bitter smile. Bao Bao, the great chief you mentioned, is he coming to the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect directly? Is he already on his way? Yes, he is already on his way. Boss, what's wrong? Hearing your tone, it seems you are reluctant to leave? Bao Bao shot a glance at Qin Chongyang and revealed a strange smile. Qin Wushuang gave a long sigh. Bao Bao, the spiritual qi deep inside the ley lines is too strong. Training for one day here is equivalent to training for a month in the outside world. I am truly reluctant to leave. Bao Bao, if you train here for 20 or 30 years, surely you will enter the Supreme Tao stage. Attracted by Qin Wushuang's words, Bao Bao felt a rush of excitement and almost forgot his current situation. However, with such an elite warrior like Qin Chongyang next to him, Bao Bao always felt pressure from his heart. Qin Chongyang seemed to be able to see through people's thoughts. When he saw Bao Bao's somewhat strange expression, he asked with a grin, "What's wrong, little monkey? Could it be that your boss is unwilling to move?" Bao Bao said with a stutter, "Great Chief, you are too godly? You even know this? Before you, there are no secrets." Qin Chongyang laughed and did not speak a word. This way, it had aroused Bao Bao's curiosity as he could not help but ask, "Great Chief, how did you know? Could it be that elite warriors of the Supreme Tao can see through other people's minds? Isn't this too terrifying?" Qin Chongyang laughed. Seeing through people's minds is not an exceptional skill. Many elite warriors know divine skills like prying into the mind. It's simple to search through spiritual perception. However, I did not do it. Then how did you know? Bao Bao asked closely. In fact, it's not hard to guess. Since the subduing Devil Stone tablet that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect is most proud of could cause the entire sect to collapse, it must be the source of spiritual qi. All the mechanisms and formations are connected to the source of spiritual qi through that stone tablet. Since it's the source of spiritual qi, it must be a place with abundant spiritual qi. Such place could only be encountered and not sought. Qin Wushuang must be very satisfied cultivating there, and won't want to leave. Bao Bao opened his mouth widely. You are too powerful. Most likely, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect wanted Qin Wushuang to come out in a hurry because they were afraid that after 20 or 30 years of training, he would become a fatal threat to the sect. Thus, they wanted to kill him impatiently. Or else, why would the heavenly Luo Daoist sect take the risk of destroying the spiritual source? This Qin Chongyang was indeed a very clever person. He could always find the crux of the problem from some small details. The only thing Bao Bao could do was to scratch his head and feel speechless. It had seen many smart people, but this Lord sect leader was too powerful. Qin Chongyang laughed. Little monkey, why aren't you talking? Bao Bao gave a long sigh. Great Chief, does the Heavenly Emperor Mountain have such a good training environment? That kind of environment can only be found by chance. Most likely, each sect would have some places with abundant spiritual qi. However, the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect is a special case. I heard that place was once the ruins of the immemorial divine battle. However, Qin Wushuang was also lucky as he got sucked in. Ordinary cultivators would never be able to enter the earth veins to cultivate. That kind of fortuitous opportunity only appears once in 10,000 years. Ordinary martial artists could not enter, but wouldn't elite warriors of the Supreme Tao be able to? Bao Bao was extremely curious. Even if ordinary martial artists did not have the strength to enter, elite warriors of the Supreme Tao could enter the ley lines to train. Qin Chongyang smiled lightly. To elite warriors of the Supreme Tao, that kind of spiritual qi from the ley lines is not very attractive. Only to martial artists beneath the Supreme Tao stage, the training environment is extremely important. After entering the Supreme Tao stage, everything becomes completely different. Haha, when you reach that step, naturally you will know. Seeing that he was unwilling to continue speaking, Bao Bao was extremely anxious inwardly. Great Chief, just what kind of concept is the Supreme Tao stage? Could it be that elite warriors of the Supreme Tao do not need spiritual qi? Of course, spiritual qi is needed. However, the power of the Supreme Tao is definitely not a simple release of spiritual qi. The power of the Supreme Tao can turn something rotten into something miraculous. For the training of the Supreme Tao, although the corporeal body is important, the most fundamental is the training of the divine soul. The corporeal body can be destroyed, but the divine soul can exist forever. Eternal divine soul? Bao Bao blinked his eyes. Can it break free from the cycle of life and death? The eternal divine soul means that under the circumstances of not being attacked, one will not enter the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Even if the corporeal body dies, the divine soul can still reincarnate and find a new dwelling. However, the divine soul can also be destroyed. In a battle between Supreme Tao elite warriors, it would not count as a victory to destroy the corporeal body. Only by destroying the divine soul can it be counted as killing the Supreme Tao elite warrior, understand? Bao Bao asked as if he had understood. This way, the training of the divine soul is the most important for Supreme Tao elite warriors. For the training of the divine soul, the richness of the spiritual qi will not affect it much, right? Yes, the stage of the divine soul does not rely on the spiritual qi, but on the understanding of the heavenly Tao and nature. The Supreme Tao completely breaks away from the rules of the secular world and stands above the rules. To the Supreme Tao elite warriors, the rules of the secular world no longer have any binding power. Theoretically, if a Supreme Tao elite warrior stands aloof from worldly affairs, then theoretically, His divine soul will never perish. However, in fact, the battle between the Supreme Tao elite warriors is much more bitter and cruel than the secular world. Haha. Across the world, where could there be a Supreme Tao elite warrior that can truly stand aloof from worldly affairs? Qin Chongyang's tone sounded somewhat rueful. Clearly, as he had stayed at the seat of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates for a long time, he had a greater sense of the battle between the Supreme Tao. Bao Bao and Lone were endlessly fascinated as they gave a long sigh. To stand above the rules, it's a fascinating existence just thinking about it. Haha, then you should work hard. From you guys, I see considerable potential. This is also the reason why I am in a happy mood. From you guys, I can imagine Qin Wushuang's talent and potential. Qin Chongyang said with a smile. That's right, for my boss's talent, to speak the truth, no one that has seen him does not admire him. However, great chief, you are an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao and have broken away from the human race. I don't know if you will admire him or not. Qin Chongyang said with a bitter smile. Are you praising me or scolding me? Bao Bao chuckled and asked probingly. Great chief, since you said it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, then could you make an exception and let my boss train down there for a while? You guys are truly newborn calves that are not afraid of tigers. In the current situation, one more day of staying means one more layer of risk. Are you not afraid of the Supreme Tao elite warriors of the Sound of Thunder sect and the Heavenly Punishing Villa making a move together? Bao Bao laughed. With you here, we are not afraid. Qin Chongyang gave a long sigh. Since that Qin Wushuang is so exceptional and this opportunity is so rare. In terms of reason, I should make an exception. How about this? I will try my best to buy time for him. How about it? Great. Bao Bao said with great joy. Great chief, you are so wise. No wonder you are the head of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. My boss often talks about how the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan would be like. Ever since he saw Senior Qin Shishuan, he was fascinated by the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Now it seems that the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan is indeed a place that our boss is fascinated by. Naturally, Qin Chongyang could hear Bao Bao's flattery. However, he enjoyed it greatly. With the current difficult situation of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, Qin Chongyang was impressed by such disciples of the Qin clan who had overcome all difficulties to seek shelter. Bao Bao immediately conveyed this good news to Qin Wushuang. On the contrary, Qin Wushuang felt somewhat embarrassed. However, since Bao Bao had already said it this way, he would not be pretentious. To speak the truth, he liked this training environment too much. It was normal for him to feel reluctant. Qin Chongyang looked at the terrain and counted the time with his fingers. Then, he said with a smile, It's about time, prepare. Prepare what? Bao Bao was confused. If we don't take care of Luohenji, how can we fight for time for your boss? Oh right. Bao Bao and Lone had realized the light. Great chief, as long as we take care of Luohenji, it will not be a problem to delay for some time. When the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect detects something is wrong, they can send people out. It will take some time. Qin Chongyang said with a smile. I only hope that people of the Sound of Thunder sect and the Heavenly Punishing Villa will not realize the truth too early. Or else, it would be difficult to fight for time. On the other hand, Luohenji had departed from the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Along the way, he had almost used his fastest speed to embark on the journey to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Although he was unwilling to deal with people of the Sound of Thunder sect and the Heavenly Punishing Villa, he had no choice in the current situation. He only hoped to use this opportunity to build a good relationship with these two powerhouses and form a strategic alliance. He knew that if he dissected the benefits to these two powerhouses, they would not remain indifferent and allow the Qin clan to have an elite warrior with the potential to become a Supreme Tao warrior out of nowhere. With their habits, they would step out to kill him. Therefore, he was not worried about the matter regarding Qin Wushuang. Now, he was most concerned about the training of the head Tao warrior. Whether he could enter the Supreme Tao stage was crucial to the future of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. If he could enter the Supreme Tao stage, even powerhouses like the Sound of Thunder sect and the heavenly punishing villa of the heavenly Emperor Eight Gates would not ignore him like last time. Elite warriors of the Supreme Tao stage were targets that every one of the heavenly Emperor Eight Gates wanted to rope in. The appearance of an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao would definitely be a delicious cake at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. After a day and a half, Luo Henji could already see the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Revisiting this place that he loved and hated at the same time, Luo Henji felt an extremely strange feeling. Heavenly Emperor Mountain, haha. Countless complicated thoughts flashed across Luo Henji's mind. If I can accomplish this great undertaking, my heavenly Luo Taoist sect will have a great social status. Thinking here, Luo Henji quickened his pace. While he was walking, suddenly, a trace of uneasy thought flashed across Luo Henji's mind. It was because he realized that he seemed to have encountered some situation. He seemed to have walked this path a moment ago. How come he seemed to have returned to the original place all of a sudden? Initially, he thought he was hallucinating. After a few times, he realized that he was truly walking in circles at the original place and could not find the path to enter the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 564. This sense of fear made Luo Henji feel cold from head to toe. Most of the time, getting lost at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain was not because of getting lost, but because one had walked into some kind of formation or got played by some elite warrior. Luo Henji was an experienced person. How could he not know this point? Feeling shocked, he started to search for a different path. However, regardless of where he walked, it was as if Sun Wukong was in the palm of Buddha. He could not walk out of this area. North, south, east, west, left, right, up and down, regardless of where he walked, it was the same path. It made him fall into a struggle, as if he had walked into an eternal trap. Which friend is playing with me like this? Luo Henji could not help but send his spiritual perception to ask. There was not even the sound of insects. Besides the endless dense fog, there was nothing else. It was as if the entire world had been covered by this dense fog. Friend, I am only a passerby. Why are you playing with me like this? Just a passerby. An extremely elegant voice sounded indifferently from the void. Then tell me, where are you going, passerby? Haha, I was planning to go to the North Ming Prefecture to visit Mu Rong Qianji, the master of the floating snow house. When I passed by this Heavenly Emperor Mountain, I wanted to pay my respects to him. I do not have any ill intentions. North Ming Prefecture, Mu Rong Qianji? That voice laughed. From what I know, Mu Rong Qianji is not at the North Ming Prefecture, right? Is that so? Then I don't know. I am going to the North Ming Prefecture to discuss some personal matters with Lord Mu Rong and catch up on the old days. Luo Henji lied and denied willfully. Catch up on the old days? You should not be an ordinary person since you are able to make friends with Lord Mu Rong, right? What is your name? Where are you from? Haha, I am from the distant border. My humble name is not worth mentioning. I am afraid it will bring disgrace to your ears. Yes, I have a good habit. Each time I go out and come home, I will wash my ears. Just speak, even if it brings disgrace to my ears, I will not mind. In the worst case, I will wash them. Apparently, this voice was deliberately playing with him. How could Luo Henji not lower his head when he was under the eaves? He swallowed his anger and said, I am a martial artist from the Judge Mountain Prefecture. Ha, Judge Mountain? Since when did the Judgment Mountain Prefecture produce an expert of the exquisite profound realm? This was big news. And you are? Inwardly, Luo Henji cried out bitterly. He had randomly mentioned a remote place and hoped to deceive the other party. Unexpectedly, this person knew the matters of the Xian Yuan mound like the back of his hand. "Friend, why do you have to force me? Before the elite warriors of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, I would not dare to speak of my lowly name." That person continued to smile unhurriedly. "If I remember correctly, the strongest sect in the Judgment Mountain Prefecture is called the Primary Central Sect, and it has settled down at the Divine Finger Mountain. The strongest leader of the Primary Central Sect was called Master Yuan Yuan, and she was a woman. Are you Venerable Master Yuan Yuan?" These words were obviously said on purpose to slap his face. Luo Henji only felt his face burning. He already knew that the other party did not buy his lies. He was a little anxious and wanted to take out his communication jade token to inform head Dao warrior about the current situation. When he held the communication jade token in his hand, he realized that the surrounding void was completely sealed. His communication jade token didn't even have the slightest reaction. This time, Luo Henji finally understood the severity of the matter. Most likely, the current situation was not an accident, but a premeditated ambush. When he thought here, Luo Henji felt somewhat anxious. If he could not even send out his spiritual perception, the situation would not be good. At this moment, his life and death did not seem important. If he delayed the heavenly Luo Daoist sect's grand plan, then he would not be able to redeem himself even if he died 10,000 times. No matter how hard he struggled, it seemed to be futile. There was no effect at all. "Friend, just who are you? If I am going to fall, at least let me know. For this battle, I am going to fall." Luo Henji could not help but ask as he knew that he could not save the situation. "Luo Henji, we have been waiting for you for a while. You are one step later than we thought," that voice said leisurely. Indeed, it was Qin Chongyang, the third chief of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Inwardly, Luo Henji's last trace of hope was completely extinguished by Qin Chongyang's words. It was as if a basin of cold water had poured over him from head to toe. You are an elite warrior of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan? Haha, Luo Henji, you are smart. This is the famous great chief of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Your Heavenly Luo Daoist sect overestimated yourselves and dared to go against the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Now, it's time for you to receive your retribution. Bao Bao's excited tone came from the outside. Luo Henji's heart sank. "And who are you? Haha, after chasing my boss for so long, you don't even know his right-hand man, Bao Bao? Your information network is too poor, right? You are that stinky monkey?" Suddenly, Luo Henji understood something. For sure, this stinky monkey had contacted Qin Wushuang and went to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan to ask for help. That's how he got caught today. When he thought here, Luo Henji felt sorrowful inwardly. This was fate. Not only was it his own fate, it was the fate of the entire Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Everything was because the enemy had seized the opportunity. The enemy had led them by the nose. From beginning to end, they had never held the initiative. In such situation, how could they not lose? Luo Henji's ambition had turned into ashes. His vision blurred as if a wave of invisible power had concentrated on him. As if he had received an electric shock, his body twitched and he fainted. As the maze formation dispersed, Bao Bao and Lone scuttled over. They walked before Luo Henji and looked at him for a while. Then, they asked with suspicion, "Great Chief, why didn't you kill this guy? It's easy to kill him. However, let's keep him and see if he can be used in a crucial moment. Even if we don't need him, we must kill him before the people of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Or else, how could we intimidate these ignorant and fearless idiots?" When he said these words, the scholarly look on Qin Chongyang's face was swept away and his tone appeared somewhat gloomy. "Okay, little monkey, Luo Henji is taken care of. Now, you guys should pray that those two powerhouses do not become alert too soon. How long Qin Wushuang can hold on will depend on his luck. Luo Henji, this accident had been taken care of. How much time he could create for Qin Wushuang would depend on fate. Qin Chongyang had done everything he could. Indeed, the methods of an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao could not be understood by Bao Bao and Lone. From the Heavenly Emperor Mountain to the Divine Brilliance Prefecture, they had walked for 3 or 4 days. However, this great chief had only used half a day to arrive at the Divine Brilliance Prefecture with ease. Bao Bao was filled with deep veneration as he praised. It seems he has divine skills. Even his speed is so fast. With the protection of an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao, this time, Bao Bao and Lone entered the heavenly Luo Taoist sect with completely different feelings. They did not have the slightest worry. In comparison, Qin Chongyang appeared more cautious. He did not enter the heavenly Luo Taoist sect with great fanfare. Instead, he used his supreme Tao skills to sneak into the 9 refined mysterious Wind Valley. Currently, the 9 refined mysterious Wind Valley was already an inescapable net. A dozen defense lines were set up inside and outside. Each defense line was overseen by elite warriors. How could this situation resemble a young man of the human countries? It was as if they were facing a life and death enemy. Those who did not know the inside story would certainly think that the heavenly Luo Taoist sect was besieging an old devil at the peak of the common mysterious stage. Who would have thought that they were only dealing with a young man of a little more than 20 years old? Qin Chongyang brought the 2 spiritual beasts and ignored these defenses as if they were nothing. Although these defenses appeared like an iron bastion, to elite warriors of the Supreme Tao who had broken through the rules of the secular world, these defenses existed in name only. Qin Chongyang took whatever he wanted and soon, he entered the core area of the 9 refined mysterious Wind Valley like a fish in water. Currently, Luo Tongtian was still guarding the scene. The heavenly punishing hawk cooperated with him on the spot. Clearly, Qin Wushuang was not interested in this formation. At this place, it was not convenient for Bao Bao and Lone to communicate with Qin Wushuang through spiritual perception. He was afraid that if the movements of his spiritual perception were captured by the heavenly punishing hawk, it would expose him. Thus, he was more passionate about admiring Qin Wushuang's masterpiece. Looking at the messy state of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, Qin Chongyang seemed to be admiring a famous painting. He appeared to be intoxicated and in love with it. If he did not have absolute evidence, he would find it difficult to believe that the mastermind that had caused such destruction was that young man from the human countries. Soon, 3 days had passed. Luo Tongtian was somewhat anxious. It was impossible that Luo Henji had not arrived at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain? If he had arrived, how come he did not send back any news? He knew that the Heavenly Emperor Mountain was a forbidden place. Under normal circumstances, it would be difficult to send out spiritual perception. However, before arriving at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, at least there should be a reminder. Luo Tongtian was extremely annoyed as he waited patiently. Another 4 or 5 days had passed. He estimated that Luo Henji had been gone for 7 or 8 days. According to the agreed date, even if he had not arrived, he should have made some progress. However, there was still no news from Luo Henji. Luo Tongtian could no longer sit still. Inwardly, he blamed Luo Henji for not following the rules, not keeping the promise. On the 10th day, Luo Henji could no longer sit still as he said to the heavenly punishing hawk, "Divine Hawk, my second went to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, there should be some news, right?" The heavenly punishing hawk said, "Perhaps he is still trying to persuade the Sound of Thunder sect? I already contacted the heavenly punishing villa, Luo Henji did not go." Second, did not go to the heavenly punishing villa? Luo Tongtian was astonished as he said with dissatisfaction, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" The heavenly punishing hawk said coldly, "You didn't ask me. Besides, I don't like to speak your human language." Without Luo Henji, I am too lazy to speak. Luo Tongtian truly wanted to slap this heavenly punishing hawk to death. He suppressed his anger forcefully and begged against his will, "Divine Hawk, then please put in some more effort. Contact the person in charge of the heavenly punishing villa and ask them to go to the Sound of Thunder sect to see what is going on. My second has always been a steady person, he will not hang himself on one tree." The heavenly punishing hawk said reluctantly, "Then I will try." Who let this matter rise to the level of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain competition? Clearly, his words meant that once Qin Wushuang made a big move here, he would directly threaten the great plan of the two powerhouses to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. The Heavenly Punishing Hawk was the guardian spiritual beast of the Heavenly Punishing Villa. It would be difficult for him to sit by and do nothing. Another 2 or 3 days had passed with this communication. The result surprised them greatly. Luo Henji did not go to the Heavenly Punishing Villa or the Sound of Thunder sect. In other words, Luo Henji was missing. Luo Tongtian felt as if he had been struck by lightning. After he received the news, he stood there stupefied. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 565. Luo Henji had gone missing. At this crucial moment, what did it mean for Luo Henji to go missing? It meant that most likely something unexpected had happened. Most likely, Luo Henji had been intercepted by the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. When he thought here, Luo Tongtian's hands and feet turned cold. He stood there dumbstruck, and could not make a sound for a long time. He was already stunned by this unexpected event. At the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect, Luo Henji was Luo Tongtian's most trusted assistant and the most intelligent Dao warrior. Luo Tongtian had to admit this point. Thus, he had discussed many matters with Luo Henji. He was not used to losing Luo Henji all of a sudden. However, he was the leader of a sect and knew that he must not panic at this moment. He worked hard to calm himself down and organized his thoughts. Then, he said to the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, "Divine Hawk, regardless, please convey the situation to the Heavenly Punishing Villa. If we allow Qin Wushuang to grow, it will not be the result they want to see." The Heavenly Punishing Hawk said coldly, "Do we need you to explain this? I already said it." At the headquarters of the Heavenly Punishing Villa, a group of higher-ups were discussing something. In terms of strength, neither the Heavenly Punishing Villa nor the Sound of Thunder sect would be stronger than the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. However, when these two sects had formed a sworn alliance, their absolute strength had completely suppressed the Qin clan. Therefore, in these 1,000 years of struggle, the Qin clan had been suppressed step by step. Countless talents had lost their precious lives in this entanglement. Even figures at the elder level like Qin Shixuan had suffered many casualties. The Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect only had one goal, and that was to destroy the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. The conflicts accumulated over a few thousand years had caused them to reach a situation where they would not rest until one of them died. "Either you die or I perish." These words were the most vivid portrayal of their relationship. Second suzerain, the second suzerain of the Sound of Thunder sect, has arrived outside the mountain gate. A scout quickly returned to report. "Everyone, come with me to welcome him." A middle-aged man with a short stature and flickering eyes stood up with a vigorous expression. He led a group of higher-ups of the Heavenly Punishing Villa and walked towards the mountain gate. The Heavenly Punishing Villa was also one of the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gate. Naturally, their territory was blessed by nature. When they arrived at the mountain gate, a silver-robed man had already arrived with a few subordinates. "Master Lei Ming, you've come at the right time. I've been waiting for you to come." This vigorous and short middle-aged man was precisely the second master of the Heavenly Punishing Villa, Yen Guinan. That silver-robed man was the Thunder Sect's sect master Lei Ming. In the Thunder Sect, he was the second in command. It was equivalent to Yen Guinan's position in the heavenly punishing villa. Since Brother Guinan has invited me, this little brother doesn't dare to refuse. The silver-robed man chuckled and said, I wonder if Brother Guinan has something important to discuss? Yen Guinan pointed to the wilderness outside, saying, Brother Thunder, this is not a trivial matter. Let's find a quiet place and talk about it. Seeing Yen Guinan being so serious, Lei Ming knew the seriousness of the situation. He nodded and said, Brother Guinan, please arrange it well. Deep in the clouds of the heavenly punishing villa, Lei Ming revealed a serious expression. He had already finished listening to Yen Guinan's words and said with a deep voice, There is such a monstrous thing? There's definitely something fishy going on. Brother Lei Ming, if the heavenly punishing hawk hadn't delivered the news, I would not have dared to believe it. You said that only people at the Supreme Tao stage like you and me could come and go freely at the mountain gate of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, right? It was destroyed by a kid from the human countries. Yen Guinan's tone was also serious. Apparently, he was also extremely confused about this situation. Lei Ming gave a long sigh. If it was only a conflict between a genius from the human countries and the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, we would not have to get involved. However, the most important part is that this kid's surname is Qin. That's right, this kid's surname is Qin. Yen Guinan gave a long sigh. Previously, we had secretly set up a bounty to deal with the 100-leaf Qin clan. We wanted to cut off an important branch of the heavenly Emperor Qin clan. In the end, it was destroyed by this Qin Wushuang. At that time, we did not take this as a warning and only thought it was an accident. Now, it seems that this Qin Wushuang was a restless factor and had already destroyed our grand plan. For sure, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect is trash. Lei Ming swore with a somewhat indignant tone that Luo Henji still had the face to talk about cooperation with us. With their little skills, they even felt that they were in the way as cannon fodder. What happened in the end? It proved that we were right to not trust them completely. Brother Lei Ming, it's useless to say these things now. Yen Guinan said with an extremely serious tone. Now, the most important thing is how to remedy the situation. You and I would not want to see a disciple of the Qin clan rise quickly, right? You know that the Qin clan has a profound foundation. If we truly allow them to nurture another elite warrior of the Supreme Tao, it would be a thorny problem to you and me. Brother Guinan, what do you mean? Yen Guinan made a chopping hand gesture and said with a cold tone, Historical experience tells us that if we do not want to regret it, we must strike first. Or else, we will certainly grow and become a great calamity to you and me. Lei Ming nodded in agreement. Yes, that's right. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Inside the Xian Yuan Mound, there were countless such experiences. Before an elite warrior rose to power, they were all in the limelight. The speed and momentum of their rise were also extremely vast. During the process of their rise, the enemies of such elite warriors had not paid enough attention to them and allowed them to develop freely. Thus, they had developed to the point where it was too late for regret. Therefore, to stifle the rise of an elite warrior and the possibility of a regretful situation, the best way was to kill them in the cradle of their growth. Letting the genius die in the cradle of their growth was the wisest choice to eliminate all future troubles. Now, the problem was, who would do it? The two great elite warriors of the Supreme Tao thought of this problem at the same time. They looked at each other in dismay and laughed awkwardly. Clearly, they were counting on the other party to do this matter. However, it was clear that it would be unfair for either party to go. The heavenly punishing villa and the Sound of Thunder sect had always been of the same breath and branch. They shared honor and disgrace together. Brother Lei Ming, in fact, my heavenly punishing villa, has already contributed. Sending out the heavenly punishing hawk is already a high profile. Of course, for this matter, I do not plan to evade it. For this matter, we must do it together. Yes, let's do it together. At this moment, Lei Ming would not have any petty schemes. It would be unreasonable to let the heavenly punishing villa go alone. I have also thought it through. For this matter, even if I sent my subordinates, they would not be of any help. Besides the elite warriors of the Supreme Tao stage, no one from our two sects is stronger than Luo Tongtian. Since that Luo Tongtian is helpless, it seems that only elite warriors of the Supreme Tao can do something. Thus, you and I must make a trip. Yan Guinan did not conceal his intentions. Okay, then let's make a trip. It doesn't matter if the heavenly Luo Daoist sect is destroyed or not. However, we will never allow the Qin clan to have another young genius. Lei Ming's attitude was also determined. No, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect cannot be destroyed. Yan Guinan expressed his opinion out of the ordinary. Why do you say this? Lei Ming frowned. From his point of view, the series of problems displayed by this heavenly Luo Daoist sect did not seem like a major powerhouse that was qualified to form an alliance with them. Lei Ming, I have a question that is somewhat abrupt. I might as well ask you. Go ahead. I want to ask, when you and I joined hands to fight against the heavenly Emperor Qin clan, major battles, small conflicts, and even situations where two armies confronted each other have happened countless times. However, in the end, we still could not destroy the heavenly Emperor Qin clan. It seems that if this situation continues, we will still hold the upper hand in the battle against the Qin clan. However, do you have 100% assurance to destroy them? This question was incisive. After a moment of silence, Lei Ming said with a bitter smile, although I don't want to boost the morale of others, the fate of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain is tough. They are a tough bone to chew. To chew them in a short time, we must have more helpers. If another powerhouse from the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates is willing to join, the Qin clan will be destroyed. Haha, if someone was willing to join, they would have done so 1,000 years ago. This assumption is meaningless. Yan Guinan said with a bitter smile, the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates are intertwined and have complicated relationships. When we scheme against the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, others are also on guard against us. They will not form an alliance with us that easily. Besides, they are already entrenched in the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates and do not hold any historical grudge with the Qin clan. There is no need for them to go against the Qin clan. Therefore, we can only count on those powerhouses that want to enter the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Then we should look for those first-rate powerhouses that are not part of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gate. There aren't that many of them. This Heavenly Luo Daoist sect is truly useless. Yan Guinan laughed. Lei Ming, in the end, there is only one reason why the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect is being restrained in all aspects. What reason? It's simple. They do not have a single elite warrior of the Supreme Tao. If they had a Supreme Tao elite warrior, the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect would definitely have great potential and could be on par with other first-rate powerhouses. However, that is all in the past. Now with their mountain gate destroyed, they have lost their greatest support. Then it's even more impossible to count on them. Lei Ming said. No, I feel that this is the best time to rope in the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect and control them. A trace of shrewd and strange smile emerged from Yan Guinan's vigorous eyes. What do you mean? Yan Guinan said. After this great calamity, the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect's morale is low. Most importantly, with their foundation destroyed, it's almost impossible to rebuild it. Therefore, they urgently need a place to settle down. Therefore, they are even more desperate for the position of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. This kind of pressing mentality is the best way to stimulate their greatest potential. Brother Guinan, you are not planning to support the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect, right? Lei Ming asked with a somewhat surprised tone. It's not support, it's control. That Luo Tongtian is already at the peak of the common mysterious stage, and has great hope to enter the supreme Tao stage. If we can help him at a crucial moment, once he enters the supreme Tao stage, to deal with the heavenly Emperor Qin clan, he will definitely be the best chess piece. Among those first-rate powerhouses, are there any as obedient as the heavenly Luo Daoist sect? Are they this easy to control? In comparison, those first-rate powerhouses that were not part of the heavenly Emperor Eight Gates all cared about their status. It would not be easy to control them, and with the current situation of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, it would be easy to control them. Thinking here, Lei Ming was also somewhat moved. Sorry, the 6th update is still being edited. If it is not updated before lunch, it will be updated quickly after lunch. Please don't leave. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 566. If Luo Tongtian could enter the Supreme Tao stage, even if the mountain gate of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was destroyed, they would rise with the tide. To the Xian Yuan Mound, an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao would be a significant figure. With an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao, they would be qualified to become the true mainstream powerhouse of the Xian Yuan Mound. They would be able to participate in the major events of the Xian Yuan Mound. Lei Ming looked at Yan Guinan and said with a smile, "Brother Guinan, this way, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect is the only choice in your heart?" Lei Ming also smiled at ease. He did not evade Lei Ming's gaze as he asked leisurely, "Brother Lei Ming, then what do you think, if we remove the heavenly Emperor Qin clan from the heavenly Emperor Mountain, who would be more advantageous to occupy their position? Would you rather have a first-rate powerhouse that does not listen to us enter, or would you rather have the heavenly Luo Daoist sect that is easier to control?" Haha, of course the heavenly Luo Daoist sect would be better. Only their performance is too terrible. Are they qualified to enter the heavenly Emperor Eight Gates? Therefore, the crucial question is whether Luo Tongtian can enter the Supreme Tao stage. I plan to give Luo Tongtian 15 years. 15 years? Lei Ming frowned slightly. Then, he understood something and nodded. So Brother Guinan is already considering that matter in 18 years? If we cannot destroy the Qin clan in 18 years, then we can only squeeze the Qin clan out of the heavenly Emperor Mountain through the proper channels. At this point, the two of them laughed heartily from the bottom of their hearts. After the discussion, Lei Ming and Yan Guinan walked together. Just as they were about to leave the heavenly punishing villa and depart, suddenly, a burst of peaceful crane cries emerged from the sky. Deep inside the white clouds, a group of white cranes flapped their wings and flew. Behind this group of white cranes, a chariot pulled by 5 dragon beasts rolled over from the sky with an imposing manner. This formation caused Lei Ming and Yan Guinan to be greatly shocked. This disposition of forces made them instantly understand the identity of the person that had arrived. They immediately stood on the side respectfully and said with a loud voice, "Is it the sage of the Heavenly Emperor Gate?" The Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates took turns to be the Emperor. However, the gate that occupied the seat of the Heavenly Emperor would be the Heavenly Emperor Gate. Regardless of the original name of this gate, the other 7 gates would automatically call them the Heavenly Emperor Gate. This was to set off the supreme position of the Heavenly Emperor Gate at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. As the name suggests, although the Heavenly Emperor Mountain had 8 gates, the core was still the Heavenly Emperor Gate. The war chariot landed, and a boy and girl floated out of it. Both of them looked like they were carved from jade. Pulling open the curtain of the chariot, a young man in luxurious clothes walked out. Behind the chariot, there was a row of silver-armored guards. When the young man stepped out of the dragon chariot, they very neatly surrounded him. Lei Ming and Yen Guinan both sucked in a breath of cold air. Prince Xian? When the young man saw Lei Ming and Yen Guinan, he was also slightly surprised. How did you two know that I am here to visit? Lei Ming and Yen Guinan both smiled bitterly. Not daring to hide anything, they could only say, the two of us didn't know that young master would grace us with his presence. We were just about to go out when we suddenly heard the cries of cranes in the air. So when we looked up, we saw that your highness had arrived. That's really quite a coincidence. I didn't expect that the master of the Thunder Sect would also be at the Heavenly Punishing Villa. I was just about to visit the Heavenly Punishing Villa before going to the Sound of Thunder Sect. You two appear to be in a hurry. Could it be something urgent has happened? Yen Guinan gave a long sigh. It's about that trivial matter with the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. That Heavenly Luo Daoist sect has always shared a friendly relationship with my Heavenly Punishing Villa. Now they have asked for help several times. If we don't take care of them, we would feel somewhat apologetic. When this Prince Xian heard the words, Heavenly Luo Daoist sect, he paused for a moment. However, he did not find it strange as he nodded. That's right. In that case, go ahead. By the way, second suzerain Yen, is your head suzerain inside the mountain gate? The head suzerain is already out. When Prince Xian had come to visit, regardless of how deeply the head suzerain of the Heavenly Punishing Villa was in solitary training, he had to come out to welcome him. Indeed, before Yen Guinan had finished speaking, a long whistle emerged from inside the villa. Prince Xian has graced us with your presence. I apologize for not going out to welcome you. Fortunately, second received me, or else it would have been too negligent. This head suzerain was Yen Guinan's brother from the same mother. His name was Yen Beifei, and he was a few years older than Yen Guinan. The two brothers ruled the Heavenly Punishing Villa together. This was also one of the great oddities of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. The figure of this Yen Beifei was much more tall and sturdy than Yen Guinan. He gave people the feeling of having a rough figure. However, although this Yen Beifei appeared to be straightforward, in fact, he was extremely meticulous. He was even more astute than Yen Guinan. Prince Xian laughed and turned to speak to Yen Guinan and Lei Ming. If you two have important matters to attend to, please go ahead. It's fine to have the head suzerain to accompany me. These two had declined a few times. When they saw Prince Xian was sincere, they finally dared to bid farewell and leave. After they had left the Heavenly Punishing Villa, Lei Ming could not help but say, Brother Guinan, it seems something has happened since Prince Xian came to visit. The prince they spoke of was Xian Wuji, the son of the current Heavenly Emperor of the Heavenly Emperor Gate. This person was unquestionably the number one figure among the younger generation of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. He was also the role model and the number one idol among the younger generation of the Xian Yuan Mound. Besides the Xian Yuan clan, the totem clan that never came out, Xian Wuji could be said as the number one trump card among the younger generation of the Xian Yuan Mound. Despite his young age, this person was already at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Additionally, he was an existence that could break into the Supreme Tao stage at any moment. For your information, this Xian Wuji was only 40 years old. In the Xian Yuan Mound, at the age of 30 years old, he was simply a junior among the juniors. In the martial arts world, especially in a place like the Xian Yuan Mound, there were thousands of years-old monsters everywhere. Martial artists that were a few hundred years old could be said to be everywhere. Martial artists that were 1,000 years old were also as numerous as dogs. However, among those that were as numerous as dogs, how many of them had trained to the peak of the common mysterious stage? This also proved the terrifying talent of this Xian Wuji from the side. It also proved the reason why Xian Wuji's family was able to sit on the seat of the Heavenly Emperor and rule the entire Xian Yuan Mound. Yen Guinan had been thinking about this matter. Upon hearing Lei Ming's question, he also shook his head with a bitter smile. It must not be a small matter for Prince Xian to step out. Brother Guinan, you truly did not receive any news? From Lei Ming's tone, there was a trace of jealousy. Prince Xian had paid a personal visit to the heavenly punishing villa and the sound of thunder sect. What did this mean? It meant that the heavenly punishing villa held a higher position in Prince Xian's heart. It could even mean that in the eyes of the heavenly emperor, the heavenly punishing villa held more weight than the sound of thunder sect. Yan Guinan denied flatly, Brother Lei Ming, I swear, I know nothing about this matter. I also dare to promise that my big brother did not know about it beforehand. This is purely an unexpected visit. An unexpected visit. Lei Ming mumbled and gave a long sigh. Could it be that there are some movements? Let's hope that there won't be any more trouble. Yan Guinan laughed. It's none of our business. Let's not think too much and take care of the business at the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. You also saw Prince Xian's attitude. Yes, it seems that he also does not wish for the destruction of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Or else, he only needed to give us a slight reminder. How could you and I dare to go? He did not object and asked us to leave. His attitude is clear. Brother Lei Ming, we must speed up. When these two spoke up to hear, inwardly, they shuddered and sped towards the direction of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. With such a delay, more than half a month had passed since Luo Henji had departed, and Qin Wushuang had stayed in the depths of the ley lines for almost a month. Currently, Qin Wushuang only felt joy filling his heart. After training for almost a month, he had truly experienced the meaning of rapid progress. If his previous speed of progress had already made many people click their tongues in wonder, then this month's speed could be described as defying the natural order. He already felt that on the path of the transformation void martial stage, he had already broken through all the obstacles and obstacles. In this month, he had encountered countless obstacles. If it were in the past, it would have taken him a long time to climb over these obstacles. However, in this month, Qin Wushuang had easily crossed these ditches and ridges. Each time he crossed over, he could feel a form of substantial improvement and a brand new appearance of the stage. Great, but unfortunately, after all, the training of the void martial stage is not the same as the spiritual martial force. Without the comprehension from actual combat, without the stimulation of the stage, regardless, I cannot advance to the profound void martial stage. It would be great if I could freely enter and leave the depths of the ley lines. Qin Wushuang thought with regret. He knew that it was time to go out. If he did not go out, most likely the situation in the outside world would change drastically. Immediately, he used the communication jade plate to contact Bao Bao. When Bao Bao received Qin Wushuang's spiritual perception, he was overjoyed. Boss, you finally contacted us. Are you ready to come out? Qin Wushuang laughed leisurely. I don't want to go out. However, inside here, without a good stimulation point, it would be extremely difficult to break through in a short period of time. Unless an elite warrior comes in to fight with me, perhaps it would give me a flash of inspiration. Or else, I can only sit here and wait for a gradual process of comprehension. If there was no good stimulation point and he could not form an epiphany, it did not mean that he would not be able to break through. As time passed, he could still break through if he continued to comprehend. However, it would be impossible to predict the time. Perhaps it would be 3 to 5 months, 3 to 5 years, or even 30 to 50 years. No one could guarantee it. Hearing Qin Wushuang's words, Bao Bao also said with regret, Unfortunately, I cannot go in, or else I would fight with you. Haha, boss, now that you are also at the transformation void martial stage, I am afraid I cannot beat you. Are you guys still at the 9 refined mysterious Wind Valley? Qin Wushuang asked with a smile. Yes, Great Chief is really patient. Boss, your Supreme Tao elite warriors of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain are really good to you. Bao Bao sighed with emotion from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, suddenly, the wings of that heavenly punishing hawk stood upright. It let out a piercing cry and glared fiercely at Bao Bao's direction. This heavenly punishing hawk had sensed the subtle movements of the spiritual perception. For such indescribable movements, only elite warriors of the Supreme Tao could grasp it. However, this heavenly punishing hawk had caught it. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 567. Divine Hawk, What's Wrong? Instantly, Luo Tongtian became alert and blew a short whistle. Immediately, the entire encirclement became alert. The heavenly punishing hawk said with a sharp voice, "There is spiritual perception movement, someone has broken in." A cold light flashed across Luo Tongtian's eyes. Good. Spiritual perception movement, it must be those two loyal friends of Qin Wushuang. Everyone stay alert. Following the trajectory of that spiritual perception movement, the heavenly punishing hawk opened and closed its wings. Like lightning, its body congealed into a beautiful arc and shot out like an arrow. Luo Tongtian knew that for sure, this heavenly punishing hawk had discovered the enemy's track. He held the broadsword with both hands and also transformed into a meteoric light to slash out against the wind. The speed of the heavenly punishing hawk was extremely fast. While it was dashing forward, suddenly, with a rumbling sound, a layer of barrier appeared out of nowhere in the direction it was heading. One only heard a muffled boom sound. Instantly, the body of the heavenly punishing hawk bent backwards as if it had been bounced back by a wave of gigantic power. The power of this bounce caused the feathers of the heavenly punishing hawk to scatter in all directions. When Luo Tongtian, who was behind, saw the situation, he saw the opportunity quickly. He turned in the air and did not rush forward. He retreated a few dozen meters as if he had seen a ghost. "Who is it?" Luo Tongtian was truly shocked as he looked forward with rapt attention. In front of him, a transparent wall of air that seemed to be invisible slowly broke apart, and wisps of spiritual mist rose into the air. If it wasn't for this, they would not have seen such a powerful obstacle ahead of them. When the heavenly punishing hawk was knocked away, more than half of its feathers had fallen off. Its appearance was more like a chicken that had been soaked in boiling water. People could not help but laugh. However, although this prideful spiritual beast was furious to the extreme and the ruthlessness in its bones was boiling, it did not dare to approach after it had suffered a moment ago. It looked down from afar and for the first time, there was a form of fear in its eyes. At this time, Bao Bao jumped out from the sky and looked at the heavenly punishing hawk with a gloating expression. He said to Lone, "Senior Lone, look at that wild chicken, ha ha, all its feathers have been stripped off, ha ha." Lone also jumped out from the sky and laughed. "How could this be called the heavenly punishing hawk? It's more like the heavenly punishing chicken." These two guys had sharp tongues. "Boss, are you ready? Come out." Qin Wushuang had already accumulated power and was ready to take action. Once again, the graceful spiritual bow was reinforced with a divine Tao talisman of the wood attribute. This wood attribute was a natural counter to the earth attribute. In the earth vein, it would be even more useful. Qin Wushuang's primordial spirit didn't have a single strand of distracting thoughts. He pulled the graceful spiritual bow to its fullest, and the divine light glistened around his body. The instant Bao Bao suddenly appeared, everyone looked towards that ruined mound. Almost at the same time, the ground suddenly shook violently. Immediately after, a green light shot into the sky at lightning speed. The green light was as thick as a water bucket. It was like a trapped dragon rising to the sky, wreaking havoc and completely breaking apart the ruins. Within this green light, a figure soared into the sky. Qin Wushuang, who had been in closed-door training for nearly a month, had finally broken through the ground and appeared in the world. "Boss!" Bao Bao and Lone shouted excitedly. Luo Tongtian waved his broadsword and shouted hysterically, "Kill him!" Every one of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect seemed to have gone mad as they threw themselves towards Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang dashed into the air and suddenly, the purple cloud in Yang wings opened. Fluttering the wings against the wind, in a flash, he had already dashed a few hundred meters away. In the sky, waves of weapons and waves of attack came at him with all their might. Just when these attacks were pursuing him closely, suddenly, a burst of green light flashed in the sky. With a whoosh, all the weapons and waves of attack were swallowed by this green light. It seemed that all the weapons and waves of attack had been engulfed by a giant furnace. After this green light had swallowed everything, with a casual roll, everything had turned into ashes and scattered to the ground. Even Luo Tongtian was dumbfounded by this strange situation. When the heavenly punishing hawk saw that the situation was far from reassuring, it gave a sharp whistle and turned to leave. After all, it was a spiritual beast that lived at the heavenly Emperor Mountain. Inside the heavenly punishing villa, it was experienced and knowledgeable. It knew that such method must be a divine skill of the divine Tao. Behind that green light, a man with the face of a baby and dressed in elegant clothing suddenly appeared indistinctly. He looked at these people of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect with indifference. Is this all the heavenly Luo Taoist sect has? Suppressed by this person's temperament, Luo Tongtian instantly felt that it was difficult to breathe. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. You are Qin Chongyang? That's right, I am Qin Chongyang. Luo Tongtian, open your eyes and look at this heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Everything here is the price and punishment for overestimating your strength. Qin Chongyang spoke with an indifferent tone. From his eyes, one could not see the emotion of viewing the heavenly Luo Taoist sect as a great enemy. In his eyes there was no hatred. There was only a form of light disdain and even a form of mockery. Such eyes only belonged to those elite warriors. When they saw someone much weaker than them challenging them, how could there be any hatred? He would not even be bothered to show disdain. There was only disdain. It was not strange. With the strength displayed by the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, not to mention forming a threat to the heavenly Emperor Qin clan, it would be difficult for them to enter their eyes. Instantly, Luo Tongtian felt a sense of humiliation. It was as if someone had pulled off all his clothes. He felt incredibly embarrassed and humiliated. He said angrily, "Qin Chongyang, why are you so arrogant? Do you think that your Qin clan is still the heavenly Emperor Gate? Do you think that you still have the final say in the Xianyuan Mound? Don't pretend to be calm and collected. Even if my heavenly Luo Taoist sect cannot defeat you, there will always be people who can take care of you." Take care of the heavenly Emperor Qin clan? Perhaps there will be people like that. However, it will not be you, Luo Tongtian. It's because you no longer have the chance. Inwardly, Luo Tongtian trembled, for he knew that the other party's words were equivalent to announcing his death sentence. Finally, the anger that had accumulated inside his heart for a long time exploded. "Qin Chongyang, you are relying on your supreme Tao strength to act like a tyrant here. Kill me if you have the skill. Let's see how you will shut the mouths of the people in the world. Doesn't your heavenly Emperor Mountain always boast of your strength of character? Do you always boast of being fair? You are an elite warrior of the supreme Tao and have an unfair advantage. Let's see how the people of the world will laugh at your heavenly Emperor Qin clan for your extreme hypocrisy." Before death, Luo Tongtian was still afraid. Initially, he had spoken these sarcastic words to restrain the other party and to make Qin Chongyang restrain his fear when he made his move. Qin Chongyang smiled at ease. Luo Tongtian's words did not affect his mood in the slightest. Being an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao, he had an extremely firm will. How could he be shaken by these words? At this moment, Qin Wushuang had already dropped from the cloud. He looked at Luo Tongtian from afar and said with a cold sneer, "Luo Tongtian, others can say that I have an unfair advantage. What qualifications do you have?" Luo Tongtian said angrily, "Qin Wushuang, you destroyed the mountain gate of my heavenly Luo Taoist sect and killed my disciple. You deserve 10,000 deaths for your crimes." Luo Tongtian, put away your judge's face. Qin Wushuang was not in a good mood as he would not fall for his tricks. Initially, when your heavenly Luo Taoist sect sent Luo Yun to act like a tyrant in the human countries, why didn't you say that it was an unfair advantage? When I entered the Xian Yuan Mound, your heavenly Luo Taoist sect killed me everywhere. The bounty increased day by day. Even an elite warrior like Luo Ting had participated. At that time, why didn't you say that it was an unfair advantage? After that, your heavenly Luo Taoist sect went out in full force and surrounded me from all directions. You also sent people to the human countries to deal with my sect. Why didn't you say that it was an unfair advantage? Which of the things you've done that you didn't win with an unfair advantage? Now, do you still have the qualifications to say that others had an unfair advantage? What kind of cause, what kind of effect? This is your heavenly Luo Taoist sect's retribution. Luo Tongtian was rendered speechless by Qin Wushuang's refutation. He said with a malevolent expression, "Kid, I am not as eloquent as you. Today, if you didn't have the thigh of an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao to hug, today would be the day of your death, Qin Wushuang." Qin Wushuang said with a cold sneer, "You should worry more about yourself." After he had finished speaking, he retreated and turned to speak to Qin Wushuang. "I am Qin Wushuang, disciple of the Qin clan of the human countries. It's an honor to meet you, great chief." Qin Chongyang said with a leisurely smile, "Young man, good job. Boss, you did a great job, ha ha." Bao Bao also walked up and gave Qin Wushuang a bear hug. Lone also followed his example. Luo Tongtian held the broadsword tightly with both hands and stared in the direction of Qin Chongyang. Before an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao, he did not have much of a wishful thinking. From beginning to end, he had never planned to fight with Qin Chongyang. He was only waiting for an appropriate time to escape without a trace. Although he was only a fine line away from the Supreme Tao stage, it was this fine line that left him without any power to fight. At this moment, suddenly, Qin Chongyang frowned. He pinched his fingers and seemed to have remembered something. He turned to send his spiritual perception to Qin Wushuang. "We must go. Let's go. If we don't wash the heavenly Luo Taoist sect with blood, how could we let them down?" Bao Bao could not understand. Qin Chongyang gave a long sigh. Perhaps the heavenly Luo Taoist sect is not destined to die. "Wushuang, I will leave the grudges of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect to you in the future. Now we must go." "Great chief, is there an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao coming?" "Yes, the heavenly punishing villa and the sound of thunder sect each sent an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao. They are already on their way. Let's go." After he had finished speaking, he did not allow Qin Wushuang to speak and directly used the spiritual light to sweep them into the spiritual light. He left without looking back. Luo Tongtian was dumbstruck. He had never expected this result. Initially, he thought that today, a disaster would be unavoidable. Unexpectedly, this Qin Chongyang had left without killing a single person. Suddenly, the heavenly punishing hawk dashed down from a high place and said with great joy, "Okay, 2 elite warriors of the Supreme Tao have arrived." Without the feathers, the appearance of the heavenly punishing hawk appeared comical. As soon as he had finished speaking, two spiritual lights dropped from the sky and landed on the ruins of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Indeed, it was Yan Guinan and Lei Ming, the two elite warriors of the Supreme Tao stage. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 568. As soon as Yan Guinan dropped down, he could not help but feel shocked when he saw the embarrassed state of the heavenly punishing hawk. He immediately asked, "Divine Hawk, what's going on?" The heavenly punishing hawk said with a belly full of grievances, "Second suzerain, it's Qin Chongyang, that Qin Chongyang did it. Second suzerain, you must uphold justice for me." Inwardly, Yan Guinan was shocked as he gave a long sigh. Indeed, the heavenly Emperor Qin clan is one step ahead of us. Since we have predicted it, they have also predicted it. At this moment, Lei Ming had also returned after a round of investigation. He said with an extremely regretful tone, "Brother Guinan, we are still one step too late. An extremely fresh Supreme Tao presence had just left. Is it that Qin Chongyang? Unfortunately, we let them go again." Yan Guinan looked at the giant hole that had formed a giant hole and said with a frown, "Indeed, the person trapped below is a disciple of the Qin clan?" The heavenly punishing hawk said, "Absolutely." Luo Tongtian felt extremely ashamed as he walked up. "I am Luo Tongtian, it's an honor to meet you two Supreme Tao elite warriors." Lei Ming gave a heavy sigh. Within this sigh, there was a form of disappointment and regret. Yan Guinan also said with a bitter smile, "Head Dao Luo, this time, your heavenly Luo Daoist sect is truly going to become the laughingstock of the Xian Yuan Mound. How could a kid from the human countries be tortured to this extent by the heavenly Luo Daoist sect?" After experiencing great joy and great sorrow, Luo Tongtian had yet to calm down. With a belly full of grievances, he said helplessly, "You too, I can only say that everything is the work of ghosts and gods. If it were anyone else, they would not have expected that a kid from the human countries could turn the heavenly Luo Daoist sect into this state. Until now, I cannot accept all of this." Yan Guinan gave a long sigh. "Head Dao Luo, since this matter has developed to this extent, it is no longer the responsibility of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect alone. Brother Lei Ming and I have also discussed this. With such devilish talent, Qin Wushuang will become a great calamity one day. On this issue, we should stand on the same side." Inwardly, Luo Tongtian held a great amount of resentment. What was the use of speaking these cynical remarks? What were they doing earlier? If they had sent out a Supreme Tao powerhouse earlier, how could this Qin Wushuang escape? However, he could only criticize inwardly. On the surface, he said with a bitter smile, "Currently, my heavenly Luo Daoist sect is in such dire straits that we are like homeless wandering souls. How could we enter your eyes?" Yan Guinan comforted him. "Head Dao Luo, there is the so-called saying of how the fox grieves for the rabbit's death. Your heavenly Luo Daoist sect has suffered an extremely miserable fate. However, from the perspective of us bystanders, we also feel sorrowful. Who can guarantee that what happened to your heavenly Luo Daoist sect today will not be the tomorrow of my heavenly punishing villa and the sound of thunder sect?" These words made Luo Tongtian feel better and more comfortable. "Yes, Dao Sovereign Luo, don't be too depressed. Throughout the history of the Tian Xian land, the rise of each genius was accompanied by many earth-shattering moves and countless stepping stones. Your heavenly Luo Daoist sect is only unfortunate to have encountered a genius. You have become a stepping stone for this genius to rise. This kind of rare occurrence can only be said to be predestined. It's not your fault." Even someone as straightforward as Lei Ming had used such caring words to comfort Luo Tongtian. While Luo Tongtian was moved, He could not help but feel somewhat astonished. How come these two Supreme Tao elite warriors who usually stood high above the masses were acting out of their usual self and speaking with such a humble attitude and amiable countenance? Senior Lei Ming is right. In the history there are such geniuses. Countless existences more illustrious than your heavenly Luo Taoist sect had also become the sacrifice of these geniuses. Although your heavenly Luo Taoist sect has suffered a major blow, in the end, you have protected many elite warriors. As long as you conceal your strength, bide your time, and develop with all your strength, there is a possibility for you to rise again, or even walk towards glory. When Luo Tongtian saw them acting like this, he could not help but feel somewhat anxious and fearful. He said with a bitter smile, "You too, I am very grateful that you have come to help. If you had not come, that Qin Chongyang would have started a massacre. Your words of consolation have warmed my heart. Head Dao Luo, don't think too much. Regardless, we know that you are the number one figure. Now, we only want to ask you one thing. Do you have the confidence to make a dash for the Supreme Tao stage? If you have the confidence to make a dash for the Supreme Tao stage, our two major sects can provide protection for the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect for the time being. We will guarantee that you will not be invaded. We will put an end to any future worries." Luo Tongtian looked at these two with astonishment. While he was overwhelmed by the favor, he could not refrain from feeling somewhat worried. Their change of attitude from arrogance to deference made Luo Tongtian feel somewhat suspicious. "Head Dao Luo, for sure you have many questions. It doesn't matter, just speak your mind." Luo Tongtian had always been used to speaking with a forceful tone. Regardless of his colleagues from the other sects of the Xian Yuan Mound, or at the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect, he was always the forceful one. Now, it was rare for him to interact with elite warriors of the Supreme Tao, and two of them had appeared at once. This more or less made him feel excessive pressure. He always felt that the other party had lowered their attitude to scheme against him. Of course, this worry was not completely without reason. Since the other party had allowed him to speak, he gritted his teeth and said, "You too, initially when my second was at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, he had begged you to come and help him. However, the door was closed. Now, since you two are taking the initiative, I do have some doubts in my mind." Yan Guinan and Lei Ming looked at each other with a bitter smile and said, "Head Dao Luo, this is one of our goals for coming here. It is also to apologize to the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Initially, we did not come because we did not dare to let down our guard against the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. It was not because we did not want to help the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Now, since the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan has stepped in, and that Qin Wushuang has been proven to be a disciple of the Qin clan. In that case, our originally unclear alliance will become clear all of a sudden. Dealing with the Qin clan together is the bond to maintain this alliance. Head Dao Luo, we are only doing this to find an ally that is determined to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan." Deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan? Luo Tongtian looked at the messy environment around him helplessly and gave a long sigh. "You also saw it. Currently, what qualifications does my Heavenly Luo Taoist sect have to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan with poison?" Yan Guinan laughed happily, for everything was within his calculations. This Luo Tongtian had always been domineering. Indeed, after experiencing all these twists and turns, he had become much softer. His state of mind was also at its lowest point. This moment was the most suitable time to take advantage of the situation. Immediately, he said with a smile, "Head Dao Luo, we have all seen your talent and strength. If it weren't for this reason, we would not have invited you to join us. We think that you have the most hope to enter the Supreme Tao stage. There are many elite warriors at the peak of the common mysterious stage. However, whether one has the potential to enter the Supreme Tao stage, it depends on the person. We feel that you have the most hope to make a dash for the Supreme Tao stage. If you feel that you are not qualified to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, then when you enter the Supreme Tao stage, you will be fully qualified. Supreme Tao stage. A trace of fervent light flashed across Luo Tongtian's eyes. When spoken by a true Supreme Tao elite warrior, this term that he had yearned for day and night appeared exceptionally heavy. Yes, the Supreme Tao stage. Yan Guinan said with certainty, Head Tao Luo, if you want to gain our support, then show us your courage and prove yourself. Prove that you are qualified to be mentioned on equal terms with us. If you can prove everything, how difficult would it be for the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect to rise again? Even without the foundation of the Heavenly Sun Mountain, could it be that there are no better places to go? Unintentionally, he had thrown out another pie in the sky. Even an idiot could understand the meaning of these words. Wasn't he hinting at the position of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates? Currently, with the foundation of the Heavenly Sun Mountain destroyed, the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect needed an ideal home. Without a doubt, the position of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates was the biggest pie in the sky. At this moment, it would be the best way to satisfy their hunger. The fervent light in Luo Tongtian's eyes became even more intense. Inwardly, he was also fighting a violent struggle. He also knew that these two powerhouses had their own intentions when they threw out such alluring conditions. However, under such alluring conditions, it was difficult for him to refuse. Wasn't it just forming an alliance to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan? When it came to hatred, the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect also had countless reasons engraved in their bones. Regardless of how one looked at it, dealing with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan was an inevitable choice for the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Even if Luo Tongtian were to shrink back at this moment and not become enemies with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, how could that Qin Wushuang let it go? Since the relationship between the two parties had reached this step, it would still be a deadlock. If Luo Tongtian still had a trace of hesitation, then the following words from Yan Guinan had completely caused his blood to boil, as he no longer had a trace of hesitation. Head Tao Luo, we can only promise you two things. First, when you are making a dash for the Supreme Tao stage, we can provide protection for the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect and guarantee that no one will attack the sect. Second, when you have successfully entered the Supreme Tao stage, the three powerhouses will form an alliance to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan together. Regardless of the method, if the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan is removed from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, we will support the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect with all our strength. Lei Ming also nodded. Please believe in our sincerity. To us, the more people we have at the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates, it means our position will be more consolidated. We would definitely be happy to see our allies enter the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates, and we would not be willing for other first-rate powerhouses to enter. These were honest words, and Luo Tongtian could naturally analyze it. With such enticing conditions, it would be difficult for Luo Tongtian to refuse. Instantly, his heroic spirit emerged as he said seriously, "You too, it's rare for the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect to receive your support when we are at our lowest point. I, Luo Tongtian, promise you." Great, this is a true hero, a good man that can make a decision at the most crucial moment. The three parties clapped their hands to make an oath and were overjoyed. Qin Wushuang and his group quickly left the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect and flew back towards the aspiring throne mountain. Bao Bao said curiously, "Great Chief, how did you know the other party had sent elite warriors of the Supreme Tao, and two of them?" Qin Chongyang said with a smile. "This is the unique tacit understanding and perception of elite warriors of the Supreme Tao. Of course, it's also because I know them better than they know me. It's also because I have always been on guard, and they did not. Great Chief, this way, you already guessed those two houses would send elite warriors of the Supreme Tao. The heavenly punishing villa and the sound of thunder sect have many capable people. They can also think of what we can think of. Only we have seized the opportunity. Bao Bao gave a long sigh. Great Chief, for someone as smart as you, they will not be able to outsmart you. Qin Chongyang smiled bitterly again. Sometimes, this little monkey's words and actions would give one a headache. He turned to look at Qin Wushuang and asked with a smile full of fondness, "Young man, it's been a long time since a disciple of the Qin clan with both wisdom and courage like you. I must say, the surprise you have brought to the Qin clan has surpassed the young people of this generation of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Wushuang, Wushuang, Wushuang is unparalleled in the entire clan." Naturally, Qin Wushuang was overjoyed to receive such compliments from an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao. However, he was not blindly optimistic as he said with extreme caution, "Third Chief, as I have just arrived, I have no intention to compete with the Qin clan. The things I have done are only coincidences due to fate." To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 569. When Qin Chongyang saw that this young man was neither arrogant nor hot-tempered, he was delighted. When the sky had turned dark, a group of people arrived at the foot of the aspiring throne mountain. This was the first time Qin Wushuang had come to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, the first time he had come to the Qin headquarters. Deep inside his heart, a form of indescribable feeling had become complicated as different sceneries entered his eyes. It seemed that this was the return of fate, a predestined karma. Qin Wushuang felt that this aspiring throne mountain, the headquarters of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, everything seemed to have appeared in his dreams. In his head, it seemed that the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan should have appeared like this. "Boss, I really like this place," Bao Bao said with smiles of exultation. The Heavenly Emperor Mountain was the holy place of the Xian Yuan Mound. Anyone who came here would have the mentality of admiring a lofty mountain. It was because when facing the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, regardless of the strength of the martial artists, they could not avoid feeling ashamed of their own inferiority. They would feel that their individual power was insignificant before this holy place. Thus, they would feel deep veneration from the bottom of their heart. "Boss, what's wrong?" When he saw Qin Wushuang's somewhat strange expression, Bao Bao could not help but ask. Qin Wushuang regained his senses and laughed. "Third Chief, why do I feel that this Heavenly Emperor Mountain seemed to have appeared in my consciousness? Any landscape that I see seems to be the way it should be?" Qin Chongyang said with a smile. "This can only prove one thing." "What?" Qin Wushuang blinked his eyes. "Proves that you have the pure bloodline of the Qin clan, and it is extremely pure. By the way, Wushuang, is your ancestor truly Qin Yu?" Qin Wushuang took out Qin Yu's jade plate. "Third Chief, this is my ancestor Qin Yu's jade plate." Qin Chongyang took it and looked at that jade plate. His expression was somewhat disappointed and frustrated. The jade plate was the same as before and did not even have the slightest trace of time. However, unconsciously, a few hundred years had passed quietly. The difference was that in these few hundred years, Qin Chongyang had witnessed the death of countless people of the same generation and even the younger generation. However, he had stood out and achieved the Supreme Tao stage. "Third Master, do you know my ancestor Qin Yu?" Within Qin Chongyang's frustrated expression, he squeezed out a smile. "When Qin Yu left, I was still an ordinary elder. As for Qin Yu, he was a core disciple. In terms of age, I'm 300 to 400 years older than your ancestor." "Ah!" Qin Wushuang also felt a little surprised. "If that's the case, wouldn't the third sect leader be around 1,000 years old?" Qian Sui. Qian Sui can only be considered a rising star in the divine Tao realm. Qin Chongyang said with a smile, in the Tianxian land, I am afraid the oldest supreme Tao elite warrior is at least a few tens of thousands of years old. A few tens of thousands of years old? Bao Bao cried out, wouldn't that make him an old monster? Qin Chongyang laughed out loud and said, little monkey, you can't say that out there. In any of the forbidden spiritual zones, there were several tens of thousands of years old supreme Tao warriors. It's just that they rarely show themselves. Then in our Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates, are there such figures? Qin Wushuang could not help but ask. The Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates also have many senior supreme Tao elite warriors. However, most likely there are none that are a few tens of thousands of years old. Usually, only the Totem clan has supreme Tao elite warriors that are a few tens of thousands of years old. For example, the Xian Yuan clan of the Xian Yuan Mound, the Dark Mysterious clan of the Extreme North Snow Zone, the Dragon clan of the Endless Eastern Sea, the Zhu Rong clan of the Heavenly Fire Southern Border, the Divine Farmer clan, and even the Karakoram Immortal clan of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. Certainly there are many supreme Tao elite warriors that are a few tens of thousands of years old. The names mentioned by Qin Chongyang corresponded to the 5 forbidden spiritual zones of the Tianxian land. In comparison, the Xian Yuan Mound was only one of them. When Qin Wushuang heard the words, Dark Mysterious Clan of the Extreme North Snow Zone, suddenly, he was moved inwardly. Qin Wushuang had a deep impression of the 2 words, Dark Mysterious. Currently, inside his storage ring, there was a command plate that was carved with the 2 words, Dark Mysterious. For this command plate, Qin Wushuang had a deep impression of it. It was because when he had just entered the Stargaze Palace, it was the first time he had killed an opponent and acquired something from him. That man in black had specialized in sneak attacking Stargaze disciples at the Virtuous Cloud mountain range of the Stargaze Palace. When Qin Wushuang had just entered the mountain gate and entered the Virtuous Cloud mountain range to train for the first time, he was attracted by the method used by this man in black to control the spiritual beasts and almost got ambushed by him. In the end, Qin Wushuang had used the power of Deep North to suck that man in black dry and won by luck. From then on, he had started his training journey that defied the natural order. Other than the snake-shaped whip, the black-clothed man had left him many other things, including the catalogue of the language of beasts, that allowed him to master the language of beasts, a broken map, and this jade tablet with the words Xian Ming carved on it. When Qin Wushuang thought of this matter, he could not help but feel suspicious. Could that jade plate be related to the Totem clan of the Extreme North Snow Zone? It seemed outrageous. If that was the case, how could it have fallen into the hands of that man in black? Although that man in black had posed a great threat to Qin Wushuang at that time, looking back now, that man in black had been insignificant. He could only be considered as an ant at the bottom of the martial arts world. When Qin Chongyang saw that Qin Wushuang was deep in thought, he only knew that he was digesting this information. Suddenly, Bao Bao said, Great Chief, the 5 places you mentioned are the 5 forbidden spiritual zones of the Tianxian land, right? And those powerhouses you mentioned, are they all totem powerhouses? That's right. Totem forces are untouchable in any of the forbidden lands of God. Then why would the Heavenly Fire Southern Border have 2 totem powerhouses? Bao Bao asked. Ha ha, perhaps the Heavenly Fire Southern Border is the most complicated place among the 5 forbidden spiritual zones. Perhaps its surface area is far less than the Endless Eastern Sea. However, the most special place is that they do have 2 totem powerhouses. One is the Fire God Zhu Rong clan, and the other is the Divine Farmer clan. Qin Wushuang was also pondering over these matters. He felt that in fact, this Tianxian land shared many similarities with the myths and legends from his former world. At least, the general structure of the world was almost the same as the mythological era in his former world. Perhaps this Tianxian land was truly a parallel universe of his former world. It was a branch of history after the fork in history. The difference was that as his former world developed, it became a technological era, and this Tianxian land had developed into a post-mythological era. Of course, these were only his personal guesses. In fact, it was no longer important. Regardless of how similar it was, this world would never connect with the world from his former world. Qin Wushuang had completely integrated into this world. Now, when he recalled his former world, he felt as if it was a lifetime ago. Currently, in his soul mark, he had already marked the Tianxian land. Qin Chongyang explained patiently. Initially, the Heavenly Fire southern border was the territory occupied by the divine farmer Flame Emperor. With the identity of the Flame Emperor, he had conquered a land in the immemorial era and established the position of the Heavenly Fire southern border. After he had achieved his hegemony, he started to be engrossed in medical skills. From then on, the Flame Emperor had turned into a divine farmer who tried all kinds of herbs. This also caused the descendants of the Heavenly Fire southern border to have different opinions. One insisted on inheriting the Fire God clan that used fire as their totem, and the other insisted on using all kinds of herbs as their totem. This is the reason why the Heavenly Fire southern border had two totem powerhouses. Bao Bao was intoxicated and fascinated. It seems that the immemorial era must have been lively? Haha, I really envy that era. I wonder what kind of situation my ancestor, the ancient spiritual monkey, was in at that time. At any moment, Bao Bao would never forget the fact that he had the bloodline of the ancient spiritual monkey. From time to time, he would mention it to satisfy his little vanity. Qin Chongyang returned Qin Yu's identity jade plate to Qin Wushuang and said, "Wushuang, this is your ancestor's jade plate, keep it as a souvenir. It's also a reminder to yourself to not forget the sacrifice your ancestor made for the Qin clan." When he said here, Qin Chongyang took a deep breath and said to Qin Wushuang, "I will take you guys up the mountain to meet the higher-ups of the sect. Then, I will bury the bodies of Qin Shixuan and the others." Of course, Qin Wushuang would not object. He only made a small request. "Third Chief, I want to know where my ancestor Qin Yu lived in the past." "Haha, this is easy. Qin Yu. If I remember correctly, he should have brothers of the same bloodline. However, their talent is far less than Qin Yu's. Ancestor Qin Yu still has brothers in the world." Qin Wushuang was rather surprised. Yes, in the martial arts world, without encountering any accidents, it's possible to live a few hundred years. In the middle of their conversation, Qin Chongyang already took them to fly up the aspiring throne mountain. After passing through layers of cliffs, they arrived at the entrance of the upright morality hall. On the path, many higher-ups were already waiting there. When they saw Qin Chongyang, they all greeted him with a smile. "Third Chief, congratulations on your triumphant return." "Ha ha ha. This young man should be Qin Wushuang, whose name has shaken the entire Xian Yuan mound, right?" Wushuang, as soon as he took out this name, he was prepared to shake the world. "I didn't expect him to be this young. Good kid, nicely done." Each of these higher-ups of the Qin clan came up and patted Qin Wushuang's shoulder and back. They expressed a form of encouragement and expectation from the seniors. From their eyes, one could clearly see a form of ardent hope. Qin Chongyang said with a smile, "Everyone, don't be in a rush to greet each other, let's go in. Guanxi, you are already familiar with Bao Bao and Lone, you will be in charge of entertaining Wushuang. Don't neglect our young people." Guanxi said with a smile, "Third Chief, who would dare to neglect him when you value him so much?" Everyone laughed and the atmosphere was rather easygoing. Initially, Qin Wushuang was still somewhat worried. He was worried that each of the people at the Qin headquarters would be senior elders with a taut face. At this moment, he saw that many of these higher-ups were extremely easygoing. To put it precisely, they were extremely easygoing to their own people. They also revealed a form of care and concern for the young people. This made Qin Wushuang feel at home as soon as he had entered this place. Guanxi took Qin Wushuang and introduced each of these higher-ups to Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang still had this bit of memory. At the Heavenly Emperor Mountain headquarters, the honored warriors were all from the Ji generation. For example, Ji Yang, Ji Song, Ji Bo, etc. The elders were all from the Guan generation. For example, Guanxi, Guanyu, Guanshan, etc. Those that could appear at the Upright Morality Hall were at least at the elder level. For example, those at the guardian level were not qualified to enter the Upright Morality Hall. The 20 to 30 higher-ups at the scene were only a portion of them. The other portion had important duties at various places of the aspiring throne mountain and would not appear at the Upright Morality Hall. While Qin Wushuang paid his respects to these seniors of the Qin clan, he also sensed the unique unity of the Qin clan. Inwardly, his sense of belonging to the Qin clan had increased imperceptibly. Such a clan, such environment, no wonder it was the former Heavenly Emperor Gate. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 570. Aspiring Throne Mountain, Sacrificial Valley. This was the place where all the heroes that had died for the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan were buried. Qin Shixuan and those warriors that had died at the Danxia prefecture had already been buried. As the name implied, the Sacrificial Valley was to sacrifice one's life for the great cause of the Qin clan. Being buried at the Sacrificial Valley was the best reward for these warriors. Everyone's expression was incredibly solemn. To Qin Wushuang this was the first time. However, to the others it was extremely common. Each year there would be a few such burial ceremonies. Each time, groups of disciples of the Qin clan would be sent away. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang only felt incredibly depressed, and a surge of emotions emerged from the bottom of his heart. As he looked at the rows of tombstones at the Sacrificial Valley, he did not know how many elite warriors of the Qin clan had been buried here and their souls had returned to this place. Everyone, let us entrust our last grief to our fallen comrades. Qin Chongyang, who was hosting this burial ceremony, was the first one to bow. Everyone behind him followed suit and bowed. Death is not their end. We should believe that although their corporeal bodies have already fallen, their souls will certainly be like the stars in the vast sky, protecting the aspiring throne mountain, protecting the Qin clan. Qin Chongyang's voice was muffled, yet incredibly determined. The bloodline of the Qin clan will not be cut off because of their death. On the contrary, it will become even more powerful because of the departure of these warriors one after another. Perhaps tomorrow or at some point in the future, each of us will be like them and be buried at the Sacrificial Valley. However, I and all of you will face it calmly. Regardless of who it is, as long as you have sacrificed for the great cause of the Qin clan, you will have a tombstone at the Sacrificial Valley. Regardless of who you are, you will be treated equally. In other words, even for elite warriors of the Supreme Tao, if they had sacrificed themselves for the Qin clan, the ceremony they would receive would only be a tombstone at the Sacrificial Valley. However, across the entire Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, everyone regarded it as their pride. Everyone's expression was strangely the same. Amidst the sorrow, there was a calm and determined look. No one showed the slightest trace of shrinking back from their eyes. For the Qin family, he would not fear death for his innate honor, his innate dignity. Wushuang. Suddenly, Qin Chongyang raised his head and looked at Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang didn't expect that Qin Chongyang would single him out at this moment. He stood up and said, "Third Chief. Everyone, this Qin Wushuang comes from the human countries and is a few million miles away from the Xian Yuan Mound. He could have just sat back and watched. He could have just stayed out of it. However, he did not. He believed firmly and did not fear death as he came to the heavenly Emperor Qin clan. What does this mean? It means that the bloodline of the Qin clan will not become thinner because of branches. The bloodline of the Qin clan was the boundless righteousness in their bones. They were the upright and plain-spoken people that carried out justice on behalf of the heavens. The Qin clan was born for the mandate of the heavens. If the heavens do not destroy the Qin clan, who can destroy the Qin clan? Who can? Qin Chongyang's eyes shone brightly as he spoke. No one can. No one answered. However, their expression and eyes had given a clear answer. No one could. Qin Wushuang's heart rippled. Now, the doubts he had about the Qin headquarters before he came to the Xian Yuan Mound had been swept away. Only by experiencing it personally, one would know why Ancestor Qin Yu had never forgotten the Qin headquarters until his death. This point could be seen from the letters he had left behind. Although Ancestor Qin Yu was in the human countries, in the end, he had yearned for the heavenly Emperor Qin clan day and night. Such yearning was no longer the result of his personal feelings. It was not the kind of personal emotion that longed to return to his root. Instead, it was a form of supreme concern for the fate of the Qin clan. This was the great love of the world, the great love that had surpassed the prejudice of the secular world. Wushuang, let me ask you, did your ancestor Qin Yu pass down the ancestral teachings of the Qin clan? Qin Chongyang asked lightly. Ancestral teachings of the Qin clan? Qin Wushuang nodded and said in a clear voice, yes, there is an ancestral teaching. Those who seek the property of the Qin clan, we will fight back with 5 times the power. Those who seek the position of the Qin clan, we will fight back with 10 times the power. Those who seek to destroy the Qin clan, we will fight back with all our power. We will not hesitate to destroy both jade and common stone. Qin Wushuang's voice was powerful and resonant. It was full of substance. As soon as his voice dropped, everyone nodded. Qin Chongyang also felt greatly gratified. Did you all hear it? Even in the most distant human countries, the branches of the Qin clan will never forget the ancestral teachings of the Qin clan, the bloodline inheritance of the Qin clan. Wushuang, being a disciple of the Qin clan, you have a proud destiny, but it could also be a sorrowful destiny. It's because, as a disciple of the Qin clan, most likely you will be entangled with troubles for the foundation of the Qin clan, or even die. However, it's also possible for you to become the pride of the Qin clan, to become the hope that holds up the future of the Qin clan, or even become the hero that turns the tide. Have you thought it through? Will you shrink back, or will you face the difficulties? There was a trace of profound meaning in Qin Chongyang's eyes as he said seriously, before countless heroic spirits of the Qin clan, you will give your choice. If you choose to shrink back, for sure the Qin clan will not make things difficult for you. If you choose to face the difficulties, today will be the day when everyone welcomes you to join the heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Everyone fixed their gaze on Qin Wushuang. They wanted to see what choice this young man from the human countries, this young man that had caused the heavenly Luo Daoist sect to fall into an embarrassing state, would make. Although Qin Wushuang was a steady person, at this moment, he could not suppress the boiling blood in his bones. He said emotionally, "Third Chief, since I am a disciple of the Qin clan, this is the pride of my destiny. I also heard that when the nest is overturned, no eggs remain intact. Therefore, not only me, all the disciples of the Qin branches in the world, from the moment of their birth, in fact, they are closely connected to the heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Only, I am luckier than many disciples of the branches. I was able to come to the holy place of the Qin clan and see all these Qin clan sages. the living, the dead. I only want to say that since the heavens have arranged this destiny, I can only meet it head-on and fight for my destiny, for the Qin clan, even if my body is smashed into pieces, to be able to enter the sacrificial valley with many of the Qin ancestors. I would not have lived in vain." His sonorous and powerful answer had convinced everyone at the scene. There was no wave of applause, yet everyone's eyes were filled with appreciation. Indeed, this Qin Wushuang had great accomplishments and lived up to his reputation. Qin Chongyang was also extremely gratified as he said with a solemn tone, "Wushuang, your ancestor Qin, you will surely smile in the underworld for your choice today." Qin Wushuang remembered the letter left behind by his ancestor Qin Yu and the feelings that had been passed down for hundreds of years. The attachment to the heavenly Emperor Qin clan, the endless longing for their homeland, the deep concern for the fate of the Qin clan, such selfless love made Qin Wushuang feel as if he had returned to hundreds of years ago when he had formed a soul communication with his ancestor Qin Yu. "Third chief, I have a presumptuous request," Qin Chongyang said. "Ever since my ancestor Qin Yu left the Xian Yuan mound from the aspiring throne mountain, from beginning to end, he had been rushing about for the fate of the Qin clan. Even if he did not die in battle for the great cause of the Qin clan, the heavens and earth can bear witness to his loyalty. I would like to make a bold request to let the remains of my ancestor Qin Yu return to the heavenly Emperor Mountain and be buried in the sacrificial valley." In fact, this request was not excessive. Qin Wushuang remembered the profound feelings in his ancestor Qin Yu's letter. He knew that returning his soul to the heavenly Emperor Mountain was ancestor Qin Yu's dying wish. His expectation and trust to the descendants of the Eastwood Qin clan was also for the future generations to carry his dying wish back to the heavenly Emperor Qin clan, to the aspiring throne mountain, and to bring honor to their ancestors. Now, since he had already carried his ancestors' dying wish, how could he ignore ancestor Qin Yu's dying wish? Qin Chongyang gave a long sigh. "Wushuang, for this sacrificial valley, throughout history, only the heroic spirits that died for the Qin clan are qualified to be buried here. Even for us Supreme Tao elite warriors, if we did not die for the Qin clan, we are not qualified to enter the sacrificial valley. Because of this reason, the sacrificial valley is the most sacred destination in the hearts of all disciples of the Qin clan. Although your ancestor Qin Yu was loyal and righteous, this sacrificial valley..." Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was shaken. Immediately, he knew that most likely his wish would not be fulfilled. "Third chief, is there truly no room to bend the rules?" "Wushuang, the rules of the Qin clan have lasted for thousands and thousands of years. They are not set up for individuals. No one can break the rules. Because of this absolute fairness, it has convinced the disciples of the Qin clan wholeheartedly. It has allowed the signboard of the Qin clan to stand erect even if it is not as glorious as before." Inwardly, Qin Wushuang felt rather regretful. Yet, he could understand. In the end, ancestor Qin Yu did not meet the condition to be buried in the sacrificial valley. Since an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao could not get special treatment, then he had nothing to complain about. Only, since he could not fulfill his ancestor's dying wish, Qin Wushuang felt incredibly disappointed. "Wushuang, the conditions are not fixed. There are exceptions to being buried in the sacrificial valley. For example, for those who made great contributions to the Qin clan, even if they did not die in battle directly, it was written clearly on the Book of Contributions that they are qualified to be buried in the sacrificial valley after death. Your ancestor Qin Yu also made a lot of contributions on the Book of Contributions. However, to be qualified to be buried in the sacrificial valley, the higher-ups still need to discuss it together. Qin Yu's contributions had already passed a few hundred years ago. Those who were not the elders of the heavenly Emperor Qin clan had already forgotten about him. They did not even know such a person existed. After all, even at the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, the new generation also changed quickly. Batches of people stepped forward one after another. For a core disciple from a few hundred years ago, it was normal for people to forget him. Not to mention he had left the aspiring throne mountain midway, and his whereabouts were unknown. Therefore, to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, if it were not for the sudden appearance of Qin Wushuang, it would be unavoidable for Qin Yu to be forgotten in the dust of history. When he saw Qin Wushuang's gloomy expression, although Qin Chongyang felt somewhat regretful, he was helpless and unable to help. Even if he was an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao and was recognized by the chief of the Qin clan, he could not show favoritism. At this moment, suddenly an elder walked out. Third chief, initially Qin Yu and I were in the same group of core disciples. He had a few brothers in his line. I remember he had a brother who died in a battle with the Sound of Thunder sect. His remains were buried in this sacrificial valley. As soon as he said these words, instantly Qin Wushuang was emotionally moved. Today's first chapter came a little late. I am not afraid of being laughed at. For this chapter, I spent at least 2 or 3 chapters of my usual time. It's because this chapter is too important for the future. Old Cow also wanted to render the entire environment more heroic and moving. He strived to write content that would capture the reader's heart. He had invested too much emotion into writing this chapter. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 571. Oh? What is his name? Qin Chongyang immediately asked. His name is Qin Xiang. This elder had a deep impression of him. It was because at that time, he and Qin Xiang were brothers and had a very good relationship. At that time, among their group, especially their little circle, he was the only one that had survived until now and had become a high-level elder. Now, he had become an elder and was called Guanfeng. However, those old brothers of his were no longer in the world. Thus, when he saw that Qin Wushuang, the descendant of Qin Yu, had somewhat similar facial features to Qin Yu, he was even more joyful as he stood out to speak. Soon, Qin Xiang's tombstone was found. Qin Wushuang walked before Qin Xiang's tombstone respectfully. After he had bowed, he took out ancestor Qin Yu's identity jade plate and put it before the tombstone. He said with a profound tone, "Ancestor Qin Yu, I am useless and cannot bring your remains back to the sacrificial valley. Now, I will place this identity jade plate here, and rest here with your brother to watch over the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. One day, I will make enough contributions for the Qin clan to bring back the remains of our ancestors and be buried here." After he had finished speaking, Qin Wushuang put down the identity jade plate and stood up. He walked away with determination and retreated to his original position. Qin Wushuang's words did not carry a heroic vow. However, there was a form of determination that came from the bottom of his heart. It made people feel anxious and moved. Qin Chongyang gave a long sigh. Qin Wushuang, this is the essence of the bloodline of the Qin clan. Wushuang, in the future, if you can make great contributions for the Qin clan, it would not be unattainable for your ancestors' remains to be returned to the clan. Qin Wushuang was overwhelmed with emotions and his eyes were also filled with determination. Third Chief, I will do my best, regardless of life or death. Elder Guanfeng walked before Qin Xiang's tombstone. Old friend, did you hear that? Your brother Qin Yu has finally produced an outstanding member of the younger generation. Your lineage will not be forgotten by others. I hope that one day, brother Qin Yu will be able to rest with you at the Sacrificial Valley. After leaving Sacrificial Valley, Elder Guan Qi had already arranged a residence for Qin Wushuang. It was located on a hill facing the sun on the south side of the Aspiring Throne Mountain. This place was an important part of the Aspiring Throne Mountain and was called the Ascending Dragon Courtyard. Its significance was equivalent to the Sea of Bamboo Courtyard to the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. However, no matter how one looked at it, this Rising Dragon Courtyard was several steps ahead of the Sea of Bamboo Courtyard. After Elder Guan Qi had settled him down, he said with a smile, "Wu Shuang, although you have not been granted the title of core disciple, with your contributions and reputation, it will not be a problem. You should wait for a few days patiently. Once the higher-ups pass the resolution, none of this will be a problem." Previously, when Qin Wushuang was at the Stargaze Palace, when he had just stepped onto the path of martial arts, he had always valued these battles for fame. It was a source of motivation for him. Now that he had reached this level, he no longer cared as much about false reputation as he did in the past. What he cared more about was the improvement of his cultivation base. The environment of this Ascending Dragon Courtyard was incredibly serene. Among the hill, there was a serene valley below. It was evergreen all year round and made one feel relaxed and happy. The residence prepared by this Ascending Dragon Courtyard for each core disciple was an individual residence. Although it was not extravagant, it had been constructed with meticulous care and preserved sufficient personal space. Qin Wushuang felt extremely satisfied as he said with a smile, "Elder Guan Qi, I am not in a hurry." "Ha ha, Wushuang, even if you are not in a hurry, the third chief is. He truly values you, you should be able to feel it, right? Even at this Aspiring Throne Mountain, among the core disciples, not many could make him value you this much." When Elder Guan Qi said here, he laughed and said with an encouraging tone, "All right, since you are able to turn the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect upside down, surely you don't need me to remind you of these things. Work hard. Now, everyone wants to see if you will have a more dazzling performance at the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan as you grow and compete with the most exceptional disciples of the Qin clan." Qin Wushuang felt apprehensive. He realized that when he arrived at the Aspiring Throne Mountain, he had truly entered the higher level of the Tian Xian land. The competition he would encounter would be completely different than in the past. However, Qin Wushuang was fearless. After experiencing so much, he had learned when to press forward and when to remain indifferent. He always believed that there was no need for him to compete with anyone. It would be enough as long as he kept moving forward on the right path. "Young man, work hard." Elder Guan Qi patted Qin Wushuang affectionately and instructed, "If you have any needs, you can contact me at any time." "Thank you for your trouble, Elder Guan Qi." Qin Wushuang sent Guan Qi out with courtesy. After Elder Guan Qi had left, Qin Wushuang returned to his own residence. He took a walk around the courtyard and enjoyed this feeling. The main reason why this Ascending Dragon Courtyard was named Ascending Dragon Courtyard was because it was located on the Ascending Dragon Slope. Rumor had it that this Ascending Dragon Slope had a divine dragon that soared to the sky. Thus, it was named as the Ascending Dragon Slope. The Qin clan had named it this way with a profound meaning. They hoped that the core disciples of the Qin clan could rise like the rising dragon and lead the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan to soar. Qin Wushuang walked around his residence a few times to familiarize himself with the surrounding environment. Then, he started to wander around the slope. On this Ascending Dragon Slope, approximately every few miles there was a residence. About 200 or 300 core disciples lived at the gigantic Ascending Dragon Slope. However, at this moment, not many core disciples lived at this Ascending Dragon Slope. They were either training outside or carrying out missions. In fact, not many stayed at the Ascending Dragon Slope like Qin Wushuang. Ever since Bao Bao and Lone had entered the Aspiring Throne Mountain, they had become much more well-behaved. Before the sacred Heavenly Emperor Mountain, they would not dare to act too presumptuous. Now, after following Qin Wushuang for a few rounds, Bao Bao could not help but ask, "Boss, are we just staying at this heavenly Emperor Mountain?" Qin Wushuang said with a smile, "Of course not, look at this ascending dragon slope, how many core disciples live here?" "That's good, it's rather interesting to live here for a few days. If I stay here forever, I will be bored to death." Bao Bao said with a chuckle, "Boss, I can see that those higher-ups of the Qin clan are treating you well. I do feel that it's good for you to stay here and develop. Honestly, when you return to the human countries, that place is not suitable for you and will not hold you." Although the words spoken by Lone sounded somewhat cruel, it was the truth. With Qin Wushuang's current stage, it would not make much sense for him to return to the human countries. Only the forbidden spiritual zones would be the most suitable stage for him. Just when Qin Wushuang was about to speak, suddenly, he saw a figure flying over from the opposite side. That figure dropped before the ascending dragon slope and walked towards Qin Wushuang with quick step. "It's Elder Guanfeng." As Qin Wushuang spoke, he went over to greet him. This Elder Guanfeng had an honest and sincere appearance. At first glance, he appeared to be an honest farmer. "Ha ha, Wushuang, I came uninvited, please forgive me for being presumptuous." Although Guanfeng was a few hundred years old, he had spent almost all of his time training in the mountains. Most likely, he was not as thorough as Qin Wushuang regarding the ways of the secular world. Qin Wushuang laughed. "What are you talking about, Elder? Please come inside." Guanfeng nodded. He didn't refuse politely and walked inside. After sitting down, Guanfeng glanced at Qin Wushuang a few times and sighed. "Wushuang, this is the first time I heard that you are Qin Yu's descendant. I am very excited." Your ancestor's brother Qin Xiang, plus me, the three of us used to have the best relationship. Both of them had better talent than me and had always taken care of me. Unfortunately, both of them had passed away early. On the contrary, I, the most useless one, have lived until now. Guanfeng's tone sounded somewhat sad. Qin Wushuang said, "This is the fate of each person." Guanfeng smiled bitterly. "I heard people say that the heavens are jealous of heroic talents. Most likely, your ancestor was a typical example of the heavens being jealous of heroic talent. I really did not expect that after he was injured, his power had decreased greatly and he had gone to the human countries. When his brother Qin Xiang went out to find him, he was ambushed by the sound of thunder sect and died in a bitter battle." Qin Wushuang was moved inwardly as if something had plucked at his heartstrings. For some unknown reason, he suddenly thought of his sister Qin Xiu. When he had been reincarnated into this world and opened his eyes for the first time, he had seen his sister's concerned eyes and expression. It had made it unforgettable for Qin Wushuang. That kind of familial affection and concern between the flesh and blood had also allowed Qin Wushuang to integrate into his new identity. "Haha, let's not talk about those sad things. Wushuang, I am very happy that you have appeared. In the future, if you encounter any problems at the Aspiring Throne Mountain, you can come to me at any time. If someone is making things difficult for you, you can also come to me." Just because of these words, Qin Wushuang's favorable impression of Guanfeng had increased greatly. Regardless, after a few hundred years, it was enough to show friendship to show such concern to the descendant of an old friend. "Elder Guanfeng, I see that the disciples of the Qin clan all care for each other. They would not make things difficult for me, right?" Guanfeng gave a long sigh. The mainstream of the Qin clan is good, yet in each place, there will always be some narrow-minded people. Don't forget how your ancestor Qin Yu was forced to leave the Aspiring Throne Mountain with cold words. If it weren't for those people's slanderous words, how could he have left? When Guanfeng mentioned the old matters, he still took it to heart. He said angrily, "They did not even think about how much contribution your ancestor Qin Yu had made. Even if his strength had regressed, His previous contributions should not have been erased. Qin Wushuang also knew that in any sect, especially major sects, there would always be some discord and conflict between the young people. As long as it was within a benign boundary, it would not matter. Besides, with Qin Wushuang's understanding of ancestor Qin Yu, rather than saying that he was forced to leave, it would be better to say that he left on his own initiative. It was because ancestor Qin Yu had a clear goal. He wanted to explore that legendary formation of the human countries, the seven deadly arrays formation owned by Qin Wushuang. Therefore, Qin Wushuang did not want to get entangled with those old grudges from a few hundred years ago. Instead, he asked, "Elder Guanfeng, I wonder if the place where my ancestor Qin Yu lived still exists?" Guanfeng said with astonishment, "In the past, didn't Qin Yu live at this ascending dragon courtyard? Until he left, he was still a core disciple. Are you talking about the place where he lived before he became famous?" Qin Wushuang nodded with a smile. To be continued. If you want to know what happened later, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 572. Qin Wushuang only wanted to understand how ancestor Qin Yu had made his fortune. He also wanted to understand these matters for his father Qin Lianshan. It was because his father Qin Lianshan had a form of persistent yearning for the past of the heavenly Emperor Qin clan and ancestor Qin Yu. In fact, Qin Wushuang could understand. To the Eastwood Qin clan that had a small population, in his father Qin Lianshan's heart, he had always hoped for a flourishing population and a flourishing situation where people could be found everywhere. Guanfeng said with a bitter smile, "To speak the truth, your ancestor Qin Yu and I only got to know each other after we became famous. When we met, we were already at the aspiring throne mountain. We did not know each other's background in the secular world. However, I remember that their hometown was at the plain field town. The entire territory of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain spanned a few 100,000 miles and was the size of a few prefectures. In fact, the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates also controlled a considerable amount of territory. At the very least, it spanned a few tens of thousands of miles. The territory controlled by the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan spanned close to 100,000 miles. Within this 100,000 miles, almost all the branches and leaves of the Qin clan were scattered. They kept providing talent for the headquarters of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. For those who could truly enter the aspiring throne mountain and become a member of the Qin headquarters, the probability was more than 1 in 100,000. Across the entire aspiring throne mountain, there were only a few tens of thousands of disciples of the Qin clan. The entire territory controlled by the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan was equivalent to a prefecture outside. The population was counted in the tens of billions. Among such a large population, it was not easy to stand out. Of course, not all of the people living in this 100,000 miles territory were disciples of the Qin clan. Most of them had foreign surnames and used the Qin clan as the core. Disciples with foreign surnames were also qualified to enter the headquarters of the Qin clan. However, the probability was even smaller. Among the tens of thousands of disciples of the Qin clan, besides a portion of exceptional disciples with foreign surnames, most of them were still disciples of the Qin clan. The Tianxian land emphasized bloodline and the concept of clans. This was fully reflected by the Qin clan. From the giant map of the Qin clan, Qin Wushuang found the direction of the plain field town. He said to Guanfeng, "Elder Guanfeng, I want to take a look there." Guanfeng said with a bitter smile, "Then you must talk to the third chief. Since you just went up the mountain, it's best not to move too much." Although they were in the territory of the Qin clan, their safety was guaranteed. However, the aspiring throne mountain is the safest place. Broadly speaking, the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan included that 100,000 miles of territory. The headquarters of the aspiring throne mountain Qin clan was only the core area of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Qin Wushuang smiled and said, "I'll go talk to the third sect leader." Guanfeng sighed, "Young people like you who don't forget their roots are really hard to come by. Wushuang, I will not stop you. You must remember, on the aspiring throne mountain, if anyone makes things difficult for you, you must tell me. There are some things that are inconvenient for you to do, but an old man like me is not afraid of anything." Qin Wushuang thanked him. "Disciple thanks Elder Guanfeng for his care and concern. If there is anything, I will definitely tell Elder." Then I'm relieved. I'm going back to the Upright Morality Hall. Why don't we go together?" Qin Wushuang nodded and departed with Bao Bao and Lone. Now, he also felt somewhat strange. Why did Elder Guanfeng repeatedly emphasize the matter of someone making things difficult for them? Could it be that inside the Qin clan, they were not as united as they had imagined? Or were there other reasons? As he had just arrived, it was inconvenient for him to ask about many things clearly. He could only secretly tell himself to pay more attention, and observe in secret. For many things, one could only know if it was hot or cold by experiencing it himself. When Qin Chongyang heard Qin Wushuang say that he wanted to return to Qin Yu's ancestral home to take a look, he did not object. He looked at the map and saw that the plain field town was not far from the aspiring throne mountain. It was less than 20,000 miles away. It was still within the range of the aspiring throne mountain. "Wushuang, since you just arrived, it's good for you to go out and relax. However, I promised the second sect leader that after you have arrived, I will take you to see him. How about it? Being a junior, I should pay my respects to all the sect leaders." Qin Chongyang laughed. "The head chief appears and disappears unpredictably, for now you will not be able to see him. However, the second sect leader is possible. Let's go, I have nothing to do now, let's go." When Qin Wushuang saw the second chief, Qin Yunran, he had completely realized why the second chief was jokingly called Madman Ran. The personality of this second chief was as different as heaven and earth compared to the wise and refined third chief Qin Chongyang. He was forthright and magnanimous. He was more like a wandering hero of the Jianghu and appeared to be somewhat frivolous. However, when he talked about serious matters, the wisdom that flashed from his eyes made Qin Wushuang realize that the second chief, Qin Yunran, was a supreme figure that was both crude and meticulous. When Qin Yunran saw Qin Wushuang, he did not have the slightest arrogance of a chief. He also received him with the fire vermilion fruit wine and laughed. "Third, what did I say? The Heavenly Emperor Qin clan did not disappoint the Heavenly Law, and the Heavenly Law will not disappoint the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. This Qin Wushuang is bestowed by the Heavenly Law. In the future of the Qin clan, countless geniuses will always emerge to take the Qin clan forward. Therefore, the outside world has always said that the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan is in danger. Such pessimistic words have been sung for thousands of years, right? Aren't we still doing well?" Qin Yunran's tone appeared incredibly optimistic. The truth was the same. Although for thousands of years, the Qin clan kept getting squeezed and their days became more difficult, among the three chiefs, Qin Yunran was the optimist. He always thought that the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had not reached the time of extinction. They were only at a low point. Regardless of the world, there would always be a rise and fall. The tree would never be green and the moon would never be round. The most crucial part was how to walk out of this low point. That would be the most important. After drinking a cup of fire vermilion fruit wine, Qin Wushuang only felt a ball of burning sensation in his lower abdomen. It was an incredibly stimulating feeling. Qin Yunran asked with a joyful chuckle, "How is it? Does this wine taste good?" It's very strong. I only feel that my lower abdomen is burning. Qin Wushuang answered honestly. Yes, I only poured half a cup for you. However, it's beyond my expectation that you only feel a burning sensation. Haha, third, Wushuang has a good physique. Qin Yunran was beaming with joy and carried a form of madness. Qin Wushuang was surprised. Could it be that drinking this wine was also a kind of test from the second chief? Qin Chongyang immediately reminded him, Wushuang, hurry and use your power to digest this wine. Second sect leader is giving you a reward. For this fire vermilion fruit wine, even those elders would find it difficult to drink it. Qin Yunran laughed out loud. Third brother, aren't you saying that I'm a little petty? It's not that I am not giving it to them, but whether they can handle it or not. This fire vermilion fruit wine was not an ordinary wine. Qin Yunran had collected different spiritual fruits of the pure fire attribute. After refining it, it was an incredibly rare thing. It was extremely masculine and could stimulate the potential of one's dantian. If someone was at the right time and was about to break through, this fire vermilion fruit wine could stimulate the breakthrough. It would be extremely effective. Qin Yunran rarely used this wine to entertain the elders. Firstly, the elders had reached a bottleneck in their cultivation and it was difficult for them to make a breakthrough. Secondly, if the fiery scarlet fruit wine could not be digested by making a breakthrough, it would stay in the body and cause side effect. Qin Yunran had dared to give it to Qin Wushuang because he had seen through Qin Wushuang's strength with one glance. He was already on the verge of breaking through to the transformation void martial stage. He only needed a chance to enter the profound void martial stage. Thus, he had given Qin Wushuang this opportunity. At this moment, how could Qin Wushuang know about the promotion and care from a senior elite warrior? Hearing Qin Chongyang's reminder, he realized. He adjusted his breathing for a moment and guided the power of the wine to digest. Immediately, his entire body felt a form of calmness and comfort. Inside his dantian, vividly, there was a form of restless desire to break through. It seemed that the 1 month of hard work at the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had not been in vain. However, Qin Chongyang had clearly seen through the severity of the situation as he said with a smile, Wushuang, I see that you have a good physique. However, the spiritual qi inside your dantian seems to be moving too hastily. This is the side effect of training in that place with abundant spiritual qi. Although the training effect is good, you must not be in a rush for success. Let these spiritual qi merge and stabilize it before you seek a breakthrough. Qin Yunran also nodded. Third is right. It's not impossible for you to break through now. However, there will be some negative effects. Perhaps it will affect your future training progress. You've done years' worth of homework in a single month. It's fast, but you should not pursue it excessively. There must be a limit. Slow down a bit. With your age, there's no need to rush. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang enjoyed the teachings of these two elders. For your information, the people sitting before him were not ordinary figures. They were the legendary Supreme Tao elite warriors. They were top-notch existences that he could not even imagine in his dreams. Most likely, one lesson from them would benefit him for the rest of his life. Qin Chongyang said again, It's somewhat strange. Wushuang, you must have had other fortuitous opportunities in the human countries, right? I see that your physique is superior to those young people who were born in the Xian Yuan Mound. Besides, even across the entire Xian Yuan Mound, those who have trained to your stage at the age of 20 are extremely rare. Haha, third, this is your prejudice. For a true genius, it's not important where they were born. I feel that if he was not born in the Xian Yuan Mound, but in a relatively simple human country, if he had enough opportunities, it would be more beneficial for his growth. It's because on his path of growth, he would not have too much pressure or too much competition. Most importantly, without the protection of a powerful family, he would need to assume responsibility from a young age. It would be extremely beneficial for him to sharpen his willpower. Don't look at Qin Yunran's cheerful and straightforward appearance. In fact, his observation skills were no less than Qin Chongyang's. From Qin Wushuang, Qin Yunran even saw that kind of wisdom that many exceptional disciples of the Xian Yuan Mound lack. That kind of thoughtfulness and experience in interpersonal relationships. Although these little details appeared subtle, in many cases, one could see many things about a young man. For example, potential, wisdom, and temperament. Sometimes, for the growth of a young man, talent alone was not enough. This point had been fully demonstrated from Luo Ting's body. For a disciple that had been locked inside the sect to train, regardless of how exceptional he was only a caged bird. In the end, he was different than those wild eagles that hunted for food outside. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.